Chapter 17. Elder, it's not that I want to do this. They gone too far. They took Xiao Hong away. Su Ming mumbled. Them? The elder was stunned. One of them is at the second level of the blood solidification realm, and the other is at the third level. Su Ming put the lid back on the bottle and placed it on the table beside him. Black Mountain Tribe? How did you escape? The elder's eyes flashed. There was a cold glint in his eyes. I didn't escape. They're dead. Su Ming lifted his head and looked at the elder. The elder was stunned. Then his expression changed. After a moment of silence, he did not ask about the details. To him, Su Ming was like his own child. He watched him grow up and knew his personality. You met them at Black Flame Mountain, right? The news you sent back was very useful to the tribe. We should reward you for it, but you hid the fact that you've become a berserker, so the reward was canceled. Since you've become a berserker, then stay. I'll tell you about my experiences as a berserker. I also want to help you sort out the blood in your veins. The elder looked at Su Ming and smiled. Elder! Su Ming scratched his head. After a moment of hesitation, he said softly, I was wrong. Aren't you going to ask me how I became a berserker? Why would I ask? Everyone has their own secrets. I only need to know that my Su Ming has become a berserker. That's enough. The elder smiled happily. Su Ming's eyes were slightly wet. He looked at the elder and nodded his head silently. He would never forget the elder's kindness towards him. He would never forget the dark dragon's saliva that flowed through his veins. He would never forget everything else. All of these things were imprinted in his mind and soul. Elder, I have some medicinal pills. Su Ming looked at the elder and spoke softly. Medicinal pills? The elder was stunned. Then he shook his head and smiled. You're talking about herbs, right? I know you have some unusual herbs, but I'm the elder of Dark Mountain Tribe. Other than some rare herbs, I don't have any. Huh? Before the elder could finish speaking, Su Ming had already taken out 2 small bottles. He opened them and placed them before the elder. The 2 small bottles were filled with green medicinal stones and emitted waves of medicinal fragrance. There were more than 10 pills inside. The elder's eyes shone brightly, and his expression instantly turned serious. He picked up the small bottle containing the pills and looked at it closely. It was clearly different from what he knew. He then took a whiff, and his expression immediately changed. What a strange medicinal effect. With just a whiff, it seems to make the blood flow and one's body speed up. After a while, he closed his eyes and fell in a deep thought. After a long while, he opened his eyes once again and looked at Su Ming. These are medicinal pills? Su Ming nodded his head and pointed at the small bottle. He began explaining how to use it and its effects. The elder sucked in a sharp breath. When he was halfway through, his expression immediately changed. Without any hesitation, the elder lifted his right hand and swung it forward. Immediately, an illusionary statue of the god of berserkers appeared before Su Ming. That statue was the statue of the half-human, half-beast Dark Mountain Tribe. The moment the statue of the god of berserkers appeared, a gentle force immediately spread out and surrounded the entire room. Go on. Su Ming saw the elder's serious expression, and his heart pounded against his chest. He slowly told the elder about the effects of the scattering dusts. The elder had already stood up. Once he heard Su Ming's words, he poured out one of the scattering dusts and looked at it for a while before swallowing it. He believed that Su Ming would not hesitate. He then took out a small purple bottle and drank the few remaining drops of medicinal liquid in it. He then sat down once again. Very soon, a large amount of blood-red light shone from his body. The blood-red light was so bright that it covered the entire room. Su Ming took a few steps back, his face filled with respect. There were many blood veins all over the elder's body. He could not tell how many there were. A chi that was even stronger than that of the tribe leader of Dark Mountain Tribe filled the entire room. Su Ming took a deep breath. He looked at the glowing statue of the god of berserkers in the middle of the room. He had a feeling that if it were not for the statue, the light from the elder's training would have spread throughout the entire tribe. Even if they were far away, they would still be able to see it. The light came quickly and disappeared just as quickly. After a while, the elder opened his eyes. The red light on his body disappeared without a trace. There was excitement in his eyes. He looked at the scattering dust and took a deep breath. Su Ming, you must remember one thing. The elder lifted his head and looked at Su Ming. Su Ming's face turned serious as he listened respectfully. From today onwards, you cannot tell anyone about this pill. Even if I ask you again, you must not say a word. From today onwards, I will not ask you anything about this. Even if you are in the tribe, you must remember this. You cannot tell anyone, not even Lei Chun. The elder looked at Su Ming meaningfully and said solemnly. Su Ming hesitated for a moment. The elder sighed. He understood Su Ming. He knew that Su Ming had a simple personality. That was why he spoke again in a serious tone. Su Ming, listen to me. Don't tell anyone. Su Ming nodded silently. His eyes were filled with determination. It's not safe in the tribe, the elder mumbled. His words stunned Su Ming, especially when he remembered how the elder had covered up his chi in front of the tribe leader and the other two people. There's a traitor in our tribe. Only you, me, and the tribe leader know about this. There's no one else. This traitor has hidden himself too well. We don't know who he is. Besides, you brought back news that my old enemy in Black Mountain Tribe might have reached a breakthrough. I've been feeling that there's something wrong with the atmosphere around us recently. It's as if a disaster is about to befall us. Su Ming, your pills are good. I'll keep them. You don't have to give them to me anymore. If I can really reach a breakthrough, these will be enough. If I can't, no matter how many more you give me, it'll be useless. I don't lack herbs, but I've reached a bottleneck. I need luck. The elder sighed and spoke to Su Ming again. Once he was done, he took out a strange item made of wooden strips. As he looked at the item, a nostalgic look appeared on the elder's face. After a long while, he handed the item to Su Ming in a treasured manner. I obtained this when I was traveling when I was young. It's called a wooden slip. You can only see it in big tribes. The characteristics of many herbs are recorded in it. Take it. Su Ming took the item. He looked at it curiously and put it away in his bosom. He was about to bid farewell to the elder and return to his lodgings when the elder looked at him. At that moment, the elder looked at Su Ming. His eyes were bright and his expression was serious. Su Ming, I'm happy that you've become a berserker. But you must know that once you become a berserker, you'll be different from the others in the tribe. The path of training in the ways of the berserker is filled with obstacles. You might die at any moment. You should have felt this when you were in Black Flame Mountain. But as a member of the berserker tribe, how can we give up just because we're afraid of death? I know your dream. You want to walk out of this place and see the world outside. I support you on this. Su Ming listened quietly and nodded. You're a filial child. I've watched you for so many years and I know that. But my power is limited and I can't help you much. But our Su Ming, if he can't become a berserker, then it's fine. Once he steps onto the path of training in the ways of the berserker, I'll do everything in my power to make your path smoother. A smile gradually appeared on the elder's stern face, and he waved at Su Ming. Come, sit down cross-legged before me. Circulate the power of your blood according to how you usually train. Su Ming looked at the elder, whose hair had turned white and whose face was filled with wrinkles, looking at him kindly. Even if he knew that he was not related by blood to the elder, the kinship between him and the elder surpassed everything else. Elder, Su Ming mumbled. Hurry up and come over here. The elder laughed. Su Ming obediently went before the elder and sat down cross-legged. He took a deep breath and slowly circulated the chi in his body. 6 blood veins gradually appeared on his body. As the 6 blood veins let out a red glow, the shadow of the 7th blood vein could be seen slowly forming on his body. Su Ming had not been able to manifest the 7th blood vein during the past month. He could not even manifest the shadow. This was largely due to the hidden injuries in his body. But now that his hidden injuries were healed by the elder, when he circulated his chi, the 7th blood vein naturally manifested. You've received the inheritance from the statue of the god of berserkers. You know that if a berserker wants to reach the 3rd level of the blood solidification realm, they need 11 blood veins. As for the 4th level, they need 25 blood veins. The 5th level requires 53 blood veins, and more after that. When you reach the 11th level of the blood solidification realm, The number of blood veins you need should be 781. But what you don't know is that the number of blood veins is not fixed for everyone. Most of the berserkers are like that, but there are some who can increase the number of blood veins they have. The more blood veins they have, the higher their chances of reaching the Transcendence realm. Based on what I know, all the berserkers who managed to reach the Transcendence realm had at least 900 blood veins when they were still in the blood solidification realm. Take the Elder of Windstream tribe, for example. I've known him for many years. I know that he had 917 blood veins in the past. I've heard before that in some of the larger medium-sized tribes, or even some of the bigger tribes, there were people who had more than 930 blood veins when they were in the blood solidification realm. This is the Berserker tribe's blood solidification realm. In the history of the Berserker tribe, there were some people who managed to manifest 999 blood veins when they were in the blood solidification realm. Most of these people became famous. There's even a legend that if you can manifest 1,000 blood veins, then it means that you have attained completion in the blood solidification realm. But this kind of completion is extremely rare in the ancient era of the Berserkers. There might even be no Berserkers who have attained completion in the blood solidification realm. As for the details, I don't know much about them. The Elder's voice seemed to contain some sort of strange power. As Su Ming circulated the qi in his body, his voice echoed in his head. After the blood solidification realm is the Transcendence realm. The Transcendence realm is to gather all your blood veins and turn them into pure Berserker blood. Then you can draw your own solidified Berserker mark on your own body. This Berserker mark is formed by your thoughts and desires. I'm very excited and curious. If you really reach the Transcendence realm one day, what kind of Berserker mark will you draw for yourself? Chapter 18. Su Ming. These are things that are not in the inheritance of the statue of the god of Berserkers, but they are things that every single Berserker must know and remember. I might not be able to reach the Transcendence realm in this lifetime. The Elder of Windstream tribe was not as good as I was before he was 20 years old. When he was 34 years old, he was barely able to fight against me. At that time, there was no one in the surrounding tribes who did not know about me. The Elder spoke slowly. A hint of red flashed briefly on his old face. There was also a hint of pride in his eyes. However, that pride seemed to have been covered in dust. At that time, I was already at the 8th level of the blood solidification realm. The Elder sighed softly and mumbled bitterly. It was as if he was reminiscing about the past. A hint of sadness gradually appeared on his face. Su Ming, you must remember this. There is always someone better than you in this world. Never be complacent. The Elder shook his head, as if he did not want to talk about his past. I've ventured out 3 times in my life and experienced many things. I may have lost a lot, but I managed to learn a Berserker art. This art is not something that Windstream tribe knows about. Even some of the middle-sized tribes would have a hard time obtaining it. This is a Berserker art that only large tribes can learn. The true art of Berserker's awakening can only be used once in a lifetime. It's a blessing prepared for my descendants. The Elder's gaze became focused. He lifted his right hand abruptly. In that instant, his entire palm turned bright red, and he pressed it slowly on the top of Su Ming's skull. Su Ming, I will use this one and only Berserker's awakening on you. I wish you all the best. I hope that you can fulfill my wish and allow Dark Mountain Tribe to transcend once again. Circulate your qi and fuse it with the Berserker blood that I've been refining for 80 years. The Elder's entire body glowed with a blood-red light, especially on his right hand. It looked as if blood was about to drip out. A large amount of blood veins also appeared on his body. By the looks of it, there were about 700 of them. This was the Elder's true power. With more than 700 blood veins, even though he was only at the 9th level of the blood solidification realm, it was enough for him to fight against someone at the 10th level. Su Ming trembled. As he circulated his qi in his body, a warm feeling immediately appeared. It surged into his body from the top of his skull and fused into his entire body, causing the flow of his qi to increase exponentially. A large amount of black substance seeped out of Su Ming's pores. His body gradually felt transparent. It was as if every single time he breathed, the countless pores on his body would absorb a large amount of air from the world. Cracking sounds echoed in the air. Su Ming's body was no longer trembling. His face was flushed red, as if he had eaten a great tonic. The blood veins on his body also changed. The illusory seventh blood vein instantly solidified. After it solidified, the eighth blood vein appeared, and the ninth blood vein was faintly discernible. The qi in Su Ming's body circulated at a terrifying speed. Every single time it circulated, it would make his blood feel as if it was being refined. He even had the misconception that his blood had turned into something extremely viscous. This is the true meaning of the blood solidification realm. Solidify my own blood and finally form the berserker blood. When he trained in the past, he always felt that he did not have much blood left in his body. Yet now, as the warm feeling surged into his body from the top of his skull, that feeling disappeared. In his days, he even had the misconception. The elder, who was surrounded by the blood-red light, seemed to have turned into a gigantic ball of blood-red light. Su Ming himself was also a ball of blood-red light. But compared to the elder, it was like comparing the moon to a firefly. Yet the firefly was absorbing the light from the moon and was rapidly growing stronger. This is the true berserker's awakening that the elder mentioned. Only the big tribes have the art of the berserker tribe. The ninth blood vein manifested. The feeling of power filled Su Ming's entire body. The large amount of black impurities on his body seemed to have completely flowed out and was replaced by an indescribable fragrance. Su Ming immersed himself in the feeling. It was very warm. The elder was still observing Su Ming's body. He knew that this was the art of the ancient berserker. The true berserker's awakening was not to increase the power of the younger generation, but to force out all the impurities from the younger generation's body and create a suitable body for the younger generation. It would allow the younger generation to have a much smoother path of training. This was not as simple as forcing out the impurities. It was using the berserker blood as a catalyst and using a method that he did not understand. This was also the only time in his life. If he wanted to use it a second time, then the person who cast the art would immediately explode and die. His soul would be destroyed, and he would no longer exist. As the fragrance from Su Ming's body grew stronger, a smile gradually appeared on the elder's face. Yet he did not stop. He took a deep breath, lifted his left hand, and pressed it against his right hand. Soon, an even stronger wave of warmth surged into Su Ming's body. Su Ming's body trembled. There was originally no more black impurities coming out of his body, but as the warmth surged into his body, thumping sounds came from his body. A lot of black impurities came out of his body once again. At the same time, the 10th blood vein on Su Ming's body quickly solidified. In just a moment, it completely solidified. Even the 11th blood vein was gradually becoming visible. Once the 11th blood vein solidified, it would mean that Su Ming had become a berserker at the 3rd level of the blood solidification realm. Yet it was extremely difficult for the 11th blood vein to completely solidify. Even when there was no more black impurities coming out of Su Ming's body and his entire body was filled with the fragrance, the 11th blood vein was still barely visible. Su Ming, I can't forcefully help you increase your level. It won't do you any good. But with your hard work, you'll be able to reach the 3rd level soon. The elder's voice echoed in Su Ming's ears. Su Ming took a deep breath and slowly opened his eyes. The moment he opened his eyes, the world before him was different. It was much clearer than before. It was as if there were many details that he did not notice previously. Now, he could see them clearly. The world was different. His eyes were as clear as water. Yet if anyone took a closer look, they would find that they were like an abyss that would make people lose themselves in it. He saw the elder. Yet when he looked at him, the elder's face had become much older. There was a faint hint of fatigue on his face. The elder's eyes that were looking at Su Ming were filled with deep kindness and affection. Su Ming looked at the elder with a dumbfounded expression. In silence, he knelt down and kowtowed to the elder. "All right, you've grown up. You're no longer La Su. I'm a little tired. Go back. Let me rest." "Elder, Su Ming bit his lip and cast a deep look at his elder, engraving everything in his heart. He would never forget that there was a person who had accompanied him for so many years when he was young. He had let him know about family, and he had made him understand that this sort of family was something he would never be able to repay in his entire life. Come with me to Windstream Tribe in a few days. We'll visit the elder of Windstream Tribe and meet the berserkers of Windstream Tribe. When the time comes, Black Mountain Tribe, Dark Dragon Tribe, and the other small tribes around the area will all go and conduct a serendipity for your generation. Before he left, the elder's voice echoed in Su Ming's ears. I've already used a berserker art to hide the chi and fragrance on your body. Unless their level of cultivation is higher than mine, no one will be able to detect it. Don't tell anyone about you becoming a berserker. Once I find a traitor, I'll make a decision. Su Ming nodded. He watched as the elder sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes, immersing himself in his training. Only then did he leave the place quietly. He knew about Windstream Tribe. It was the only middle-sized tribe around the area. They were the overlords of the area. Su Ming had heard rumors before that the elder of Windstream Tribe was a powerful berserker in the Transcendence realm. Not only did he have a long life, he also had the power to reach the heavens. Transcendence realm. I wonder if I'll be able to reach it in my lifetime. Will I be able to draw my own berserker mark? Desire appeared in Su Ming's eyes. To him, the Transcendence realm was like a legend. It was too far away, so the elder's true power is so great. Then could it be that the elder of Black Mountain Tribe that I heard about has some sort of secret as well? Or else they wouldn't have been able to survive until now. Su Ming shook his head and did not think about it anymore. When he arrived at his home that he had not returned to for a few months, Su Ming looked at the familiar place and calmed down. The place was clean and tidy. There was not a single speck of dust. Su Ming knew that Chen Xian must have come here while he was away. Chen Xian was the only berserker among all the girls in Dark Mountain Tribe who had more contact with Su Ming. She was the tribe leader's daughter and would only marry the future tribe leader so that the tribe could continue on and no branches would be created. Su Ming knew this a long time ago, but he did not feel too much about it. In his heart, Chen Xian was like a little sister. There were no other emotions in her heart. Su Ming sat cross-legged on the wooden bed and touched the stone on his neck. There was a contemplative look in his eyes. When the sky gradually darkened, Lei Chen came to Su Ming's side with questions in his heart. But when he saw Su Ming, he was stunned once again. His naive look made Su Ming smile. He took out the herb he obtained from the skeleton of a berserker from Black Mountain Tribe. Su Ming naturally knew about Sky Stone. It was a very valuable herb. He had only managed to pick it once in the past few years, and that was when it was just a seedling. It was not like the one before him, which had already grown and had 6 leaves. Sky Stone with 6 leaves. I need more of it to make medicine. I can give you 1 leaf. It might be able to increase your power by quite a lot. Su Ming took 1 leaf and gave it to Lei Chen. Lei Chen scratched his head with a naive smile. He took the leaf and patted his chest in embarrassment. Su Ming, I don't know anything. I told you when you were young that I'll be the elder of our tribe in the future. As long as I'm here, I'll always protect you. Su Ming laughed. After chatting with Lei Chen for a while, he saw Lei Chen holding the leaf of Sky Stone with an absent-minded look on his face. It was clear that he wanted to go back and immediately eat it to train. He pretended to be tired. Lei Chen's spirits immediately lifted, and he quickly stood up to leave. The sky had darkened completely. The tribe slowly became silent. Su Ming used a chair to block the door and sat down on his bed. He took a deep breath and touched the stone on his neck with his right hand. The strange place he saw that day appeared in his mind. I've already prepared enough scattering dusts. I wonder if I'll get anything this time. Su Ming closed his eyes. He had long since figured out a way to enter that strange place. He needed to focus on training and gather all the blood veins in his body on his chest. Then, he would be able to step into that strange place. He had tried it many times when he was training. This time, he would put it into action. Chapter 19. It was still the same fog that surrounded the area. He could not see too far into the distance. Only the mountain could be seen faintly in the fog. It was quiet around him. There was no wind and no sound. Su Ming looked at the mountain shrouded in fog. This was the second time he came to this place, and the second time he scrutinized the strange mountain from this spot. When he remembered the countless strange words and pictures carved on the mountain, Su Ming could not help but feel a sense of respect towards it. He took a deep breath and lowered his head to look at the pendant on his chest. The black stone on it had disappeared. Su Ming squeezed his body and once again confirmed that he was not in a dream. He had truly appeared in this place. He put his hand into his bosom and saw that the bottles containing the scattering dust were still behind him. A glint appeared in his eyes, and he quickly walked into the fog before him. Before long, he arrived at the foot of the mountain and stepped into the tunnel. He did not stop until he reached the stone door in the tunnel. He looked at the 15 holes in the middle of the familiar lines on the stone door. Su Ming hesitated for a moment before he gritted his teeth and took out the medicinal bottle from his bosom. He poured out one pill, pinched it between his fingers, and placed it into the first of the 15 holes. Almost the moment his fingers touched the small hole on the stone door, Su Ming immediately felt a weak suction force coming from the small hole, sucking the medicinal pills and his fingers into it. Su Ming's face was grave and alert. He did not know whether his judgment was correct, and he did not know what would happen once the 15 holes were filled. But he had thought about this for a long time, and he was filled with anticipation. He did not act recklessly. Once the first hole sucked in the medicinal pill, Su Ming looked at it. But after a while, the hole remained the same. There was no change. Su Ming scratched his head. As he fell into deep thought, he brought out another medicinal pill and placed it into the second hole. Once he placed all 15 medicinal pills into the hole with a pained expression, he became even more nervous. 15 medicinal pills. If there's no change, then it'll all be a waste. Su Ming looked at the 15 holes nervously, but at that moment, a gentle light suddenly spread out from the 15 holes. Su Ming's spirits lifted. He quickly took a few steps back. As the light from the 15 holes shone brighter, the lines on the stone door seemed to have come to life. They started moving slowly, and after a moment, they connected together and spun rapidly like a whirlpool. As it rotated, the light from the 15 holes was sucked into the vortex bit by bit, causing the stone door to be enveloped in a layer of flowing light. There were also rumbling sounds that reverberated in the tunnel. It was deafening, causing 10 blood veins to appear on Su Ming's body. The qi in his entire body tumbled as he instinctively fought back against the power. The rumbling sound continued for a while. Then, 15 wisps of green smoke came out from the 15 holes. It was as if the medicinal pills inside had turned into smoke. Once the 15 wisps of green smoke appeared, the gigantic stone door started trembling. Right in the middle of the door, a straight crack suddenly appeared. The crack connected the top and bottom. Then, the stone door slowly moved to the sides before Su Ming and opened up. Su Ming's heart pounded against his chest. When he saw this, he was shocked. When the stone door was completely opened, he took a sharp breath. There was no longer a tunnel behind the stone door. There was only a stone chamber that was not too big. The walls of the stone chamber were not smooth. There were some carvings on them. There was also a tightly shut door on the wall right before him. On the ceiling of the stone chamber, there were some small stones that were glowing fused with the walls. There was also a faint fragrance coming from the stones. When people took a whiff of it, they would feel refreshed. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He walked forward slowly and cautiously. His gaze swept past the walls of the stone chamber. He saw that the carvings on the walls were similar to the ones he saw in the tunnel. There were some naked people with messy hair, creating medicinal pills in a primitive atmosphere. When Su Ming first entered this place, he was confused when he saw these carvings. Yet now that he had successfully quenched the herbs and gained more knowledge from his memories, he could understand a lot of things as he looked at the carvings. The people in the carvings were creating different medicinal pills. As Su Ming looked at them, he could not help but become immersed in them. Once he verified what he saw with his own experiences, he became obsessed and forgot about the passing of time. Once he finished looking at one, he would walk a few steps forward to search for the next one. He did not know how much time had passed, but when he finished looking at all the carvings, his gaze fell on the tightly shut door of the stone chamber. It was a stone door that was slightly different from the first door. It was completely black and exuded a faint fragrance. It was as if the stone used to make the door was very strange. There was also a heavy feeling to it. There was also a picture on the door. However, the picture was of a gigantic barren cauldron. There were also wisps of smoke emitting from the carvings. It looked very realistic. As Su Ming looked at it, he had a feeling that it was not a picture, but a real barren cauldron that was being quenched. If only I had a barren cauldron like this. Su Ming looked at it enviously. He saw a few different herbs on the top and sides of the barren cauldron. He immediately became excited and looked at them carefully. He came here to see if there were any other ways to create medicinal pills. There were 7 herbs listed on the left side of the barren cauldron. 5 of them were the herbs needed to create scattering dusts. As for the other 2 herbs, Su Ming had never seen them before. He looked at them for a while and memorized their faces. There were 8 small holes on the stone door under the formula. There were 8 herbs listed on the right side of the barren cauldron. It was the same as the one on the left. 5 of the 8 herbs were also needed to create scattering dusts. Su Ming's eyes lit up when he saw the 3 extra herbs. He knew 2 of them, but they were not commonly seen. There were also small holes under the formula, but there were more of them than on the left side. There were 12 of them. As for the 3rd formula on the top of the barren cauldron, Su Ming's expression slowly turned serious when he looked at it. This prescription wasn't about plants or trees, but 3 frightening pictures. The first one was the scale of a python's tail. The second one was the 9th leg of a 9-legged spider. The third one was a small black humanoid the size of a palm with a 3rd finger on its right hand. What was even stranger was that there were no holes under the 3rd formula. It was as if the medicinal pill was too difficult to create, so there was no need to force it to be created. Su Ming fell silent for a moment. He looked away and walked towards the stone door. He lifted his right hand and pressed it without hesitation. Immediately, the picture of the barren cauldron on the stone door let out a piercing light that enveloped Su Ming's body. After a moment of discomfort, another memory appeared in Su Ming's head. He also obtained the method to create the 3 medicinal pills and their names. South Asunder. Su Ming looked at the left side of the picture of the barren cauldron, then at the right side. Mountain Spirit. As for the last one, the welcoming of deities. Su Ming looked at the strange formula on the top of the picture of the barren cauldron on the stone door and mumbled. As Su Ming was deep in thought, the dark light surrounding him gradually dimmed. The light from the barren cauldron on the stone door also dimmed. The moment the light completely disappeared, Su Ming's vision blurred. He was not nervous. He had experienced this once before. There was a strange whistling sound in his ears. When the whistling sound stopped, his vision slowly cleared up. He was still in his room in the tribe. Su Ming took a deep breath and immediately went to the door. He moved the chair away and pushed the door open. It was still dark outside. The stars shone brightly in the sky. It was quiet all around him. The night breeze blew past him, bringing with it a chill. However, there was a white line in the sky in the distance. It was clear that dawn was about to arrive. The time inside and outside should be about the same. Su Ming closed the door and sat down cross-legged once again. He supported his chin with his hand and fell into deep thought. The methods to create these 3 medicinal pills are all different. I've never seen the 2 herbs in the formula for South Asunder, so I won't think about it for now. As for the welcoming of deities, Su Ming's pupils shrank slightly. This pill isn't made from plants, and the ingredients required are too strange. But based on the memories I obtained, once this pill is formed, the phenomenon that appears is incredibly shocking. Su Ming recalled the people he saw in the memories he obtained. Once he created the welcoming of deities, he could vaguely see the weather change and the wind and clouds tumble backwards. Su Ming could not help but feel his heart pounding. If I can create this pill, it will definitely be amazing. It's a pity. Even the stone door did not have a small hole. It's clear that the creation of this pill is incredibly difficult. That's why it has nothing to do with opening the door. Su Ming thought about it for a moment and guessed most of it. The only thing I can create now is Mountain Spirit. I know 2 of the 3 extra herbs. I might not have them with me, but there should be quite a lot of them in the medicine store in the tribe. As Su Ming was thinking, the sky outside gradually brightened. A new day had arrived. Even if he did not rest for the entire night, Su Ming did not feel sleepy. This feeling was incredibly obvious after he reached the second level of the blood solidification realm. It was as if he had a lot of energy. Unless he stayed up all night for a few days straight, he would not feel tired. When the sun rose and the tribe members started their busy day, Su Ming washed up and walked toward the house not too far away from the tribe. It was built with plants and was surrounded by fences. It was also guarded by the tribe members at all times. Chapter 20. The early morning wind brought with it a slight chill. In this cold winter season, it was like a knife. However, as the bonfires in the tribe swayed, it seemed to be able to chase away the cold and let warmth fill the entire tribe. For berserkers, the circulation of qi in their bodies could help them fight against the cold. However, since most of the tribe members were normal people, most of them would not go out during winter. Even if they went out, they would wear thick beast skins to avoid the cold. It was also during this season that the common doctors in the tribe were the busiest. They had to make large amounts of medicine for the tribe members to drink to increase their resistance against the cold. The elder would even personally help them during the coldest days. He would not hesitate to circulate his qi to help the tribe fight against the cold. As he stepped on the snow on the ground, crunching sounds echoed in the air. Su Ming put on a bee-skin robe and walked into the tribe. He looked at the familiar tribe and the members of his tribe who smiled and nodded at him in greeting. That warm feeling seemed to be able to chase away the chill of winter. The houses in the tribe were mostly simple. They were fine during normal times, but it was difficult to keep out the wind during winter. That was why they had to stick a lot of beast skins outside the houses to stop the cold wind from entering. However, the beast skins could not stick for too long and had to be fixed again. The bonfires in the houses also had to be filled with tree branches from time to time. Because of that, winter was a torture for most of the people in the tribe. Fortunately, they would not freeze to death. It was just a little more troublesome. As Su Ming continued walking, he arrived at the fences of the house that was constantly guarded by his tribe members. This was the place where Dark Mountain tribes stored their herbs. The house was covered with thick beast skins, and there were also a few bonfires burning around it. When he got closer, he could feel a wave of warmth mixed with the cold wind blowing towards him. Su Ming was very familiar with this place. Every time he came back from gathering herbs, he would bring them here. That was why when the guards saw Su Ming, they all smiled and did not stop him. Su Ming also smiled and greeted the tribe members. He walked into the fences and was about to push the door open when a surprised voice called out to him from behind. "Su Ming, when did you come back?" It was a woman's voice. It sounded very pleasant, like the chirping of a lark. Su Ming's footsteps faltered and he turned around to look. A gentle look appeared in his eyes. It was a rather tall woman wrapped in thick bee skins. Her long hair was tied up by grass, and there were two exquisite white bone earrings on her ears. Her skin was slightly rough, but it could not hide her beauty. Her eyes were huge and looked like pools of water. They were very clear and filled with innocence. At that moment, there was joy in her eyes, and with a few brisk steps, she arrived before Su Ming. "I came back yesterday." Su Ming smiled. The woman was Chun Xin, the one who would usually tidy up his house when he was not around. Suddenly, Su Ming's smile froze on his face, and his gaze shifted slightly. She wasn't alone. Behind her was a young man who was about 18 or 19 years old. This young man was quite strong, even more so than Lei Chen. In this winter, he only wore a thin animal skin shirt. His hair was messy, but it wasn't dirty. Combined with his sharp face, he gave off a fierce and arrogant aura. His eyes, in particular, were like stars. There seemed to be some kind of strange totem flickering in his pupils, giving people an invisible sense of oppression. It would always make people uncontrollably vigilant, as if they had seen a ferocious beast. He stood there with a bow on his back. His eyes were like arrows as he looked at Su Ming. "Su Ming, Bei." "Big brother Bei Ling." Su Ming looked at the young man with a complicated look in his eyes as he spoke respectfully. The young man before him was the strongest among the younger generation in Dark Mountain tribe. The berserker body he possessed was something that even the elder could not compare to. It was not until Lei Chun was discovered to have a berserker body that Su Ming could somewhat compare to him. As the strongest among the younger generation in the tribe, his progress was incredibly fast. Su Ming had even heard of him from the elder once that this person had the highest chance of breaking through the blood solidification realm and becoming the legendary transcendence realm. That person's name was also well known in the other tribes nearby. Even Windstream tribe had heard of him. They sent someone to take him away to Windstream tribe to be taught. Su Ming did not expect that he would be able to see him on that day. There was a complicated look in his eyes because when he was young, Bei Ling had taken good care of him like a real big brother. Bei Ling had even taught him some of his archery skills at that time. After all, Bei Ling was the child of the head of the guards in their tribe. Naturally, his archery skills were extraordinary. However, all of this changed when Chen Xian was 12 years old. Perhaps it was because Chen Xian and Su Ming had become too close, but gradually, Bei Ling's gaze towards Su Ming became strange and hesitant. Eventually, his gaze slowly turned cold, and eventually, he became completely distant. He would even ignore Su Ming when they met. Su Ming later found out that it was because the tribe leader and Bei Ling's father had decided to marry him. Su Ming wanted to explain himself, but all his words were met with the same cold stare. Slowly, he could only sigh. His contact with Chen Xian also became further and further apart. He knew that he was just a normal member of the tribe. He also knew that he was an abandoned baby picked up by the elder when he went out to train around 10 years ago. Even if the people in the tribe treated him well as he grew up and allowed him to fully blend in with them, allowing him to experience the warmth of family, it did not change the fact that his appearance was different from the rest of the tribe. "Why didn't you tell me you came back? I went to look for you a few times, but you were never there." Chen Xian scrunched up her nose and grumbled. Su Ming touched his nose and avoided Chen Xian's gaze. He only felt that Chen Xian was like family to him. He did not have any other feelings towards her. He did not want his big brother Bei Ling, who treated him so well when he was young, to continue misunderstanding him. "Big brother Bei Ling, when did you come back?" Su Ming looked at the majestic Bei Ling. At such a close distance, he could clearly feel the vast power of qi coming from Bei Ling's body. That power was the strongest he had seen in the tribe besides the elder, the tribe leader, and a few others. However, the fierce and arrogant air about Bei Ling was as strong as his qi. It made Su Ming feel as if he was suffocating as he stood before him. Yesterday, Bei Ling's expression remained the same. He was as aloof as ever. His words were short and brief, as if he was just brushing things off. He turned his head and looked at Chen Xian beside him. "Xian, didn't you want to get herbs for your mother? Let's go in." As Bei Ling spoke, he held Chen Xian's hand and walked past Su Ming. He pushed open the door to the house that stored the herbs and went in. Chen Xian wanted to say something, but after a moment of hesitation, she did not speak. Instead, she nodded at Su Ming and followed Bei Ling into the house. Su Ming stood there and remained silent for a while. He sighed softly and walked in as well. Chapter 21. The house that stored the herbs was very big. It was also very tidy inside. There were rows upon rows of shelves where all sorts of herbs were placed neatly. There was a slightly smaller room in the deeper part of the house. The herbs inside were different from the ones outside. They were for the berserkers in the tribe. Normal tribe members could not enter. Even if a common doctor came here, he or she would need the permission of the chief or the elder to enter the room, which was very important to the entire Dark Mountain tribe. However, these rules were useless against Su Ming. The elder had given Su Ming a special status a long time ago. He could enter the house whenever he wanted, and it would make it easier for him to identify the herbs. Once he stepped into the house, Su Ming saw Bei Ling holding Chen Xian's hand before him as they walked towards the small room filled with precious herbs. There was an old man sitting cross-legged outside the door. That old man wore a bee skin robe. He was frail, his hair was white, and his face was covered in wrinkles. He originally had his eyes closed, but at that moment, he opened them a slit and took the sign from Bei Ling and Chen Xian. He cast a glance at it, but there was no change in his expression before he closed his eyes once again. Su Ming's footsteps slowed down. He knew that Bei Ling did not want to see him, so in silence, he did not follow him into the small room. Instead, he walked around the rows of shelves and looked at the herbs on them. Su Ming was very familiar with them. He had picked almost every single one of them before. When he was done looking at them, Bei Ling and Xian still had not come out. Su Ming hesitated for a moment and hesitated outside the small room. Young La Su, why are you hesitating? As Su Ming hesitated, an old voice reached his ears. He lifted his head and saw that the owner of the voice belonged to the old man who stood guard outside the small room all year round. Grandpa Nan's song, I'm no longer a La Su. Su Ming scratched his head and smiled. I remember now. The La Su of your generation completed the Berserker's awakening a few months ago. I can't call you young La Su anymore. The old man grinned. His eyes were filled with kindness. Since you're here, why don't you go in? Don't be afraid. I'll support you. I even dared to snatch your elder's woman in the past. What's there to be afraid of? The old man winked and teased him. Su Ming widened his eyes. This was the first time he heard of something like this. After a moment of hesitation, he pushed open the door to the room with a bitter smile and walked in. He was not hesitating about Xian, as the old man had said. He was just thinking about Bei Ling, who he owed a debt of gratitude to. He did not know how to explain it to him. Even after so many years, Bei Ling was still as cold as ever. Oh well, Su Ming sighed. The moment he pushed open the door to the small room, he saw the handsome man standing beside Xian, who was choosing herbs. He turned his head around and cast him a cold glance with a frown. Once Su Ming met his gaze, he walked towards the shelf by the side. He ignored the two of them and started examining the herbs used to create mountain spirit based on his memories. Xian also saw Su Ming. She wanted to say something, but after a moment of hesitation, she did not speak. She was gradually growing up and understood many things. She also came to know of her relationship with Bei Ling. The hint of affection she had for Su Ming when she was young slowly faded away. Night marrow grass, thousand-leaf flower. Su Ming walked around the small room slowly. He swept his gaze across the valuable herbs and eventually found the two herbs he needed to create mountain spirit. It's a pity I don't have the last one. As Su Ming fell into deep thought, he looked through all the herbs in the small room. By then, Xian and Bei Ling had also finished choosing the herbs they needed. Once Xian bade farewell to Su Ming, she was dragged out of the room by Bei Ling. Before they left, Bei Ling paused. He did not turn his head back, but instead spoke calmly. If you don't have a berserker body, these herbs are useless to you. You might as well leave them for the other tribe members. Take care. Once he finished speaking, Bei Ling left with Xian. Su Ming remained silent. He lifted his head and looked at the two of them leaving. He did not speak. Instead, he took the two herbs he needed and left the room. The old man sitting by the door did not mind Su Ming bringing out the herb. Instead, he looked at Su Ming with an interested expression. Grandpa Nan's song is not what you think. Su Ming touched his nose. What am I thinking? I didn't mention the complicated relationship between you and the two young La Sus. I didn't. The old man laughed. Su Ming's face turned slightly red. He felt a little awkward. Suddenly, he had an idea. He crouched down and looked at the old man. Grandpa Nan's song. Have you seen this herb before? As Su Ming spoke, he drew a picture of an herb on the ground. The old man smiled. He lowered his head and looked at it. There was a contemplative look in his eyes. After a while, he slapped his forehead. Isn't this cloud gauze grass? We don't have this herb in Dark Mountain. It needs a special environment to grow. Among the tribes around here, only Windstream tribe sells it. Why do you want it? I saw it in one of the elders' books, but I couldn't find it even after searching for a long time in Dark Mountain. So that's why. Realization dawned on Su Ming's face. Of course we don't have it. This is a good herb for berserkers at the lower levels of the blood solidification realm. Even if Windstream tribe sells it to the public, the price would be too high. But if you want it, you can ask your elder to bring you to the square outside Windstream tribe. They often sell all sorts of herbs there. The old man shook his head and smiled. Su Ming had an idea. After asking a few more questions, he stood up and bade farewell to the old man. Under the old man's playful gaze, Su Ming quickly left. Once he walked out of the herb storage place, Su Ming started walking on the snow in the tribe with a heavy heart. Cloud gauze grass. I can gather all the other herbs for mountain spirit, but this cloud gauze grass. Grandpa Nan's song said it's very expensive. Huh. Su Ming frowned and searched his body. Besides the stone coins he found on Black Mountain Tribe's Yuchi, he did not have any other money on him. In the tribe, they usually traded for other items. They rarely needed money, but once they left the tribe and went to the outside world, they would need to use stone coins to trade for the items they needed. Stone coins were a type of coin made from a unique stone. Only large tribes could make them. If anyone made them without permission, then the large tribes in the area under their control would face extermination. Su Ming only found 3 stone coins after searching his body. They all belonged to the dead Yuchi. As for Su Ming himself, he did not have a single one of them. Without money, how am I supposed to buy them? If only I had 1,000 stone coins. As for the square, I've heard the elder mention its approximate location before. Once the tribe members become berserkers, they can go there together. It's not too far from here. Su Ming smiled bitterly. His head was starting to hurt. Chapter 22. During noon, Su Ming fell in a deep thought for a long time before he gritted his teeth and left the tribe with the basket on his back. Lei Chen was with him. Lei Chen had been to the square before and had even gone there a few days ago. When he heard that Su Ming wanted to borrow some stone coins, he immediately asked about it. His spirits lifted and he volunteered to lead the way for Su Ming. Su Ming, I only have 2 stone coins with me. It wasn't easy for me to get them. When are you going to give them back to me? Lei Chen looked at Su Ming eagerly. The 2 of them ran quickly through the forest outside the tribe. You've been saying it the whole way. It's just 2 stone coins. How many stone coins is the dark dragon's saliva I gave you over the year's worth? Lei Chen, aren't we good friends? Why are you doing this? Su Ming felt a little guilty, but he glared at him, causing Lei Chen's words to turn into muffled mumbles. It wasn't easy for me to get them. Lei Chen scratched his head. As he mumbled, he seemed to have remembered something and looked at Su Ming in surprise. Oh, I just remembered. What do you want to buy from the square? I want to buy cloud gauze grass. Su Ming's body moved, and he jumped around the forest with great agility. His speed even surpassed Lei Chen's. What's cloud gauze grass? Lei Chen asked innocently. When he noticed that Su Ming had overtaken him, he immediately chased after him. Su Ming, remember to give them back to me. Su Ming, that's something I've accumulated for many years. Su Ming, even my father doesn't know where I hid the 2 stone coins. How did you know where I hid them the moment you came to my house? Su Ming, what's cloud gauze grass? Why don't you tell me? Su Ming, I've been asking you for so long. Su Ming's ears buzzed the entire way. He knew that Lei Chen loved to talk, and once he started talking, he would never stop. However, he did not expect that Lei Chen would not let his guard down and would continue talking. When dusk arrived, the 2 of them were already far away from the tribe and were in the unfamiliar forest. Su Ming could not take it anymore. He slowed down and leaned against a big tree to catch his breath. He turned his head around and looked at Lei Chen, who was also dressed generously and sitting down on the ground. Su Ming, you, remember, return me? Lei Chen panted, but when he saw Su Ming turning his head around, he immediately perked up and spoke once again. I'll give it to you. I'll definitely return it to you, but I have a request. Su Ming smiled wryly. He no longer knew what to say to Lei Chen. What request? Lei Chen blinked and revealed his honest look again. Don't look at me like that. Even Little Red's face is more realistic than yours. Lei Chen, I know what you want to ask me, but I can't say it. You'll find out in the future. Su Ming glared at him. He had grown up with Lei Chen since he was young. It could be said that he understood Lei Chen as well as Lei Chen's parents. Lei Chen looked simple and honest on the outside, but in reality, he had a lot of thoughts. However, Many people were confused by his simple and honest expression and overlooked the craftiness that flashed in his eyes. When he heard Su Ming's words, Lei Chen touched his nose and gave him an honest smile. My request is simple. If you can be quiet on the way, then once I'm done with my business, I'll tell you what you want to know. Su Ming looked at Lei Chen and spoke slowly. Lei Chen's body froze. It was as if he was frozen. In an instant, he did not move. His eyes were wide open as he stared at the spot behind Su Ming. Lei Chen. Su Ming smiled wryly. He was used to playing around with Lei Chen. He would not fall for such a trick. You're the one who told me to be quiet. I want to nod, but if I nod, I'll make a lot of noise. Look at me like this. I'm not moving, and I don't make any noise. I fit your description of being quiet. Am I not quiet? You already told me to be quiet. Don't worry, I'll be like this on the way. I won't make any noise. But if I run, you can't blame me. Stop. That's enough. Just be quiet. Su Ming rubbed the center of his brows. He saw the hint of playfulness in Lei Chen's eyes and knew that he did it on purpose. All right, I'll tell you. I have a berserker body. It's just that the elder hid it with his berserker art. Don't tell anyone about this. Su Ming's expression turned serious. Lei Chen was stunned. He nodded his head solemnly as well. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have asked. I just wanted to know whether you've become a berserker. Now I'm not worried. Haha, from now on, we'll be the future eagles of Dark Mountain Tribe. Su Ming laughed as well. The two of them rested for a while before they stood up again and rushed forward. Even if the sky was getting darker, the moon could be seen vaguely, the stars were shining, the snow on the ground was thick, and the wind was howling. The two of them did not stop as they ran. Occasionally, they would talk to each other, exuding a strong sense of friendship. I saw Bei Ling today. I get annoyed when I see him, especially when he has Chen Xian by his side. He knew that Chen Xian liked you a long time ago. Lei Chen mumbled angrily. He's changed too much. He only went to Winestream Tribe for a few years. Did he forget that he belongs to Dark Mountain Tribe? Didn't you see his expression? He even scolded me, saying all sorts of things about me. Su Ming was silent. Su Ming, I'll surpass him sooner or later. Lei Chen clenched his fists as he ran. He's Bei Ling's big brother. He took good care of us when we were young. Don't you remember that he secretly taught you how to become a berserker? Because of that incident, he was even punished by the elder. My archery was also taught to me by him. Su Ming spoke calmly. As for Chen Xian, I told you a long time ago that we're only siblings. There's nothing else. You just had to make wild guesses. Su Ming's voice was still calm. Lei Chen wanted to say something, but when he saw Su Ming's calm demeanor, he did not say anything. He understood Su Ming, just like how Su Ming understood him. He knew that Su Ming valued kindness. Su Ming, people change. After a long while, Lei Chen spoke softly. As we grow up and experience things, we all change. Perhaps one day, I will change as well. I think you will too. Lei Chen mumbled. Will I? Su Ming remained silent as he ran. When the sky darkened completely, Su Ming and Lei Chen stopped. It was inconvenient to travel at night. Besides, the square was still quite a distance away. Hence, the two of them found a big tree and built a simple temporary resting spot on top of it. One of them sat down cross-legged and circulated the blood in his body to train while the other looked around vigilantly. They took turns and prepared to spend the night there. Su Ming leaned against the tree, and his gaze fell on Lei Chen, who was sitting cross-legged before him. His body was glowing red, and he could see a lot of red lines rising and falling on his body. After looking at him for a while, Su Ming lifted his head and looked at the dark sky. The moon in the sky shone brightly, and it blended together with the stars in the sky. It was beautiful, but at the same time, it also made those who lifted their heads to look at it feel small and insignificant. People change. Will I change? Su Ming looked at the moon quietly. In his mind, scenes of Bei Ling when he was young appeared. If I change one day, what will I become? Su Ming's eyes were filled with confusion. This question was too complicated for a 16-year-old boy. Perhaps I'll become a powerful berserker doctor like the elder. I'll bring Xiao Hong around the land and go to many places I've never been to before. I'll travel to various tribes and treat many berserkers. Perhaps I'll even become an elder. Then I'll meet a girl I like and live with her. She'll travel with me until our hair turns white. Xiao Hong will become Old Hong. Then I'll tell my experiences to the lost Seuss in the tribe. It's just like how the elder always tells us about his life. Su Ming smiled. His smile was very clean, very honest, and very happy. Or perhaps I'll know where I came from, and where I came from. Su Ming smiled and sighed softly. Lei Chun, I won't change. Su Ming took a deep breath. Under the moonlight, in the land of the berserkers, he mumbled words that only he could hear. He was certain, just like how a teenager would always believe in a beautiful future. The night passed by without them knowing. When the next morning arrived, the sky was just beginning to brighten. Su Ming and Lei Chun woke up early and washed up with snow. The cold snow made them feel refreshed and even more energetic. Lei Chun had been to the square a few times before. He rubbed the snow off his face and said to Su Ming, "Based on our journey, we should be able to reach the square by noon today." Su Ming nodded. Once the two of them finished washing up, they rushed into the forest as the sun rose from the horizon. Their journey was smooth. When noon arrived, Su Ming saw a lot of houses made of grass and wood outside the forest in the distance. There was a lot of noise coming from the houses. There were quite a lot of berserkers from the nearby tribes. "We're here." Lei Chun looked at Su Ming, especially at the basket. However, the basket was wrapped tightly in bee skin, and he could not see what was inside. Su Ming looked at the square in the distance. The square was huge. It was as big as a small tribe. However, there were no fences around the square. There were a lot of strong men looking around coldly to maintain order and prevent wild beasts from rushing in. At the center of the square was a gigantic purple tent made of bee skin. The security there was very tight, as if no one was allowed to get close to it. That's where the owner of the square lives. I heard that he's a very powerful berserker. He only receives the leaders of the tribes. Lei Chun walked out of the forest with Su Ming and introduced the place to the square in a low voice. Su Ming cast a glance at the purple tent and averted his gaze. Under the gaze of the guards in the square, he stepped into the place he had never been to before. At that moment, a cold woman's voice came from not too far away. "Lei Chun." Su Ming's footsteps faltered. He immediately noticed that Lei Chun, who was beside him, shuddered when the voice spoke. Chapter 23. Su Ming could clearly feel that Lei Chun's expression was unnatural. It was as if he was afraid and helpless. Su Ming looked towards the direction where the voice came from without batting an eyelid. The moment he saw it, Su Ming was stunned by what he saw. It was a woman. She wore a shirt made of mink fur. She was also tall, so much so that she seemed to be a head taller than the frail Su Ming. It only served to accentuate her beauty. Her skin was not as rough as the other berserkers. Instead, it was fair, and at the same time, it gave off a beauty that could make a person's heart pound. Her black hair was tied up by a red rope made of grass. It was tied into two small braids by her ears. The rest of her hair flowed behind her head. When the wind blew, a few strands of her hair floated in the air, adding to her beauty. Her eyes were like clear water. When she looked around, there was a hint of sharpness. There was a cold glint in her eyes. There were some sparkling crystals on her forehead. When the snow on the ground touched them, they shone brightly. In particular, one could faintly see the two pure white canine teeth of the woman as she exhaled. There was an invisible aura of wildness about this woman. She was not a normal berserker. She was the same as Su Ming, a berserker. However, the chi in her body showed that she was only at the third level of the blood solidification realm. She was not alone. There were 3 other berserkers behind her. They were like small hills, and their gazes were cold as they stared at Su Ming and Bei Ling. The chi exuding from their bodies was only slightly weaker than Bei Ling's. There were pictures painted on the 3 men's bodies, and they looked like centipedes. A barely noticeable glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes when he noticed this. "Lei Chun, how dare you?" The woman glared at Lei Chun and gritted her teeth. Lei Chun touched his nose. His face was as honest as ever as he smiled like an idiot. I was tricked by you like this last time. You took a dyed herb and sold it to me for 3 stone coins. The woman stood in front of Lei Chun, her face filled with anger. You can't blame me. I didn't even know what herb it was. I just put it there. You were the one who wanted to buy it. Lei Chun said, feeling wronged. Give me the stone coins. The woman glared at Lei Chun, and even Su Ming, who was by his side, became disgusted with him. However, Su Ming's frail appearance caused the woman to automatically ignore him after she took a few more glances at him. But Lei Chun smiled bitterly. Just as he was about to speak, he saw a flash of coldness in the woman's eyes. The eyes of the 3 men behind her became even sharper. He immediately swallowed his words and groaned inwardly. Lei Chun, is she the one from Dark Dragon tribe that you told the elder about? At that moment, Su Ming spoke slowly with an expressionless face. The moment his words left his mouth, Lei Chun was momentarily stunned, but he quickly snapped out of his daze. He knew that Su Ming had always been a calm person. Since he had spoken, it meant that he would help. Besides, he understood Su Ming very well. When he heard Su Ming's strange words, a thought formed in his heart. He quickly took a few steps back and stood behind Su Ming, acting as if Su Ming was the leader. Yes, young man tribe master. That is the woman, Lei Chun said respectfully. Lei Chun's actions and words immediately caused the woman's gaze to fall on Su Ming. Surprise appeared on her face. The title of young berserker usually meant that he would be chosen as the elder in the future. She looked at Su Ming carefully, but no matter how she looked at him, he only looked like a normal berserker. That was why her face was still filled with murderous intent, and her voice was cold. I don't care whether you are the young man tribe master or not. Give me back my stone coins. All right, I'll give you the stone coins. But I came here with Lei Chun today to find you. Su Ming's expression was calm. He put his right hand into his bosom and took out 3 stone coins. Give me the herb you bought from Lei Chun. Su Ming looked at the woman and spoke slowly. The woman was stunned. She did not expect to get the stone coins back so easily. She could not help but feel surprised. She looked at Su Ming and Lei Chun. What herb is that? She hesitated for a moment. She did not take the stone coins back, but asked tentatively. That is... Lei Chun was about to speak when he was interrupted by a low shout. Shut up! Su Ming glared at Lei Chun coldly. Lei Chun trembled and quickly lowered his head as if he was in awe. The woman blinked at the sight. She became even more confused. She hesitated for a moment before taking out a purple herb from her bosom. The herb looked normal, but it was completely purple, making it look ferocious. At the instant she brought out the herb, the woman handed it to Su Ming, but her eyes were fixed on his expression. When she saw his eyes brighten and he stretched out his hand as if he was about to grab it impatiently, the woman suddenly started giggling like silver bells and swiftly retracted her hand. What are you doing? That's my herb. I bought it. Are you trying to steal my herb? The woman scrunched up her nose and let out a harumph. Miss, do you still want the stone coins? Su Ming was momentarily stunned and frowned. Why not? But I need to think about it. If you can prove that you're the young master of Dark Mountain Tribe, then I'll give you the herb. There was a cunning look in the woman's eyes. That look made the wildness around her even stronger. Even Su Ming could not help but feel his heart race. But his expression did not change much. Su Ming was silent for a moment. He looked at the woman before him and suddenly took a deep breath. He lifted his left hand, and the presence of the chi of someone at the second level of the blood solidification realm spread out from his right hand. Is this proof enough? This sudden change immediately caused the woman's pupils to shrink. Even the expressions of the 3 burly men behind her became grave. It was not hard to understand why they would react that way. After all, no matter how they looked at Su Ming just a moment ago, he was just a normal member of their tribe. There was not a hint of chi on him. Yet the sudden change in his expression made them feel uncertain. Young master, there must be a powerful berserker casting an art on this person to hide the traces of his chi. This powerful berserker is also much stronger than the 3 of us, or else we would have sensed it. That's right. I've been watching for a long time, but I didn't notice anything. Only the elder of Dark Mountain tribe could do this. The three burly men behind the woman whispered to the young girl. The girl's eyes flashed. She lowered her head and looked at the purple herb in her hands. She hesitated for a moment. She had been trading for this herb for quite some time. At that time, she had even talked to Lei Chen about it. It was not easy for her to get it. She thought it was an unknown item and wanted to ask the elder about it. But she found out that the purple color of the herb had stained her hands the next day. It was obvious that she had stained it later. This made her angry. It was hard for her to swallow her anger. That was why she often brought the herb here, hoping to meet that bastard Lei Chen again. Just as she was hesitating, Su Ming's slightly anxious voice reached her ears. I've already proven myself. Don't go back on your word. Here are 3 stone coins. Oh well, I'll give you 5 stone coins. Su Ming gritted his teeth and took out 2 more stone coins and gave them to the girl. 5 stone coins for the herb. The girl blinked. It was obvious that Lei Chen was the one who told her that she was from Dark Dragon Tribe the moment he opened his mouth. He even raised the price of the elder of Dark Mountain Tribe. It shouldn't be fake. This is a treasure. The girl's face was filled with pride as she shook her head. What? What are you doing? What's wrong with me going back on my word? This is mine. If you want to trade for it, then give me 30 stone coins. As the girl spoke, she saw Su Ming's bitter expression and Lei Chen's gloomy face. She became even more pleased with herself. She turned around and left with a huff. The 3 burly men followed behind him, gradually disappearing into the distance within the square. When the 4 of them left, the gloomy look on Lei Chen's face disappeared. He looked at Su Ming with a silly smile and touched his nose. Su Ming, how did you know she's from Dark Dragon Tribe? So you traded for 3 stone coins. You still have 1 more, right? Give it to me. Su Ming glanced at Lei Chen and put the stone coin back into his bosom. Don't, that stone coin I bought last time. I still have something to do. How about this? Let's split up. I'll wait for you here tonight, and we'll go back to the tribe together. Lei Chen's eyelids twitched as he quickly spoke. He did not wait for Su Ming's reply. He immediately ran a few steps and disappeared into the crowded square. Su Ming shook his head as he watched Lei Chen run away. If it were not for the fact that he was too poor, he would not have revealed his chi. The elder's berserker art was incredibly powerful. If Su Ming did not show it willingly, it would be difficult for others to see through it. But if he did not do it, then not only would he have to return the 2 stone coins he got from Lei Chen to the girl, he would also have to pay with another stone coin. Looks like I'll have to use that method. Su Ming scratched his head and walked towards the square, troubled. The square was bustling with activity. There were people buying and selling things in the tents. There were even people who laid out a small piece of beast skin on the snow outside. They placed the herbs and items they wanted to trade on it and sat by the side, waiting for the buyer to arrive. It was Su Ming's first time here. Everything was new to him. He walked around the square and looked at the items he had never seen before. There were bones of wild beasts and all sorts of strange herbs. There were even some medicinal concoctions that had been made. They sell Dark Dragon saliva too. 1 small bottle costs 1 stone coin. Su Ming stopped and looked at the Dark Dragon's saliva on the beast's skin on the ground. He blinked. How much Dark Dragon saliva have I drunk since I was young? How many stone coins would that cost? Xiao Hong also drank quite a lot. Su Ming mumbled as he was about to leave. Suddenly, he focused his gaze and stared at the item on the beast's skin on the snow not too far away. This is... Su Ming took a deep breath and walked towards the beast's skin stall. He cast a glance at the owner of the stall. It was an old man in his 50s. He wore a loose beast skin shirt and sat cross-legged on the snow, unmoving. Chapter 24. The old man opened his eyes as if he sensed someone approaching him. He looked at Su Ming, and a hint of surprise appeared on his face. He looked at Su Ming carefully before closing his eyes once again. Su Ming stared at the blue object on the beast's skin. It looked like a plate. The edges of the plate were sharp, but there were a few cracks on it. The deepest one looked as if it was going to pierce through the plate. It lay quietly on the beast's skin. Occasionally, it would let out a weak light, giving people the illusion that the plate was alive. Su Ming could see some carvings on the plate as the cracks intersected with each other. The carvings were of a ferocious ghost face. It looked terrifying. This is a defective berserker vessel. You can't afford it. As Su Ming observed the plate, he heard an old voice. Su Ming lifted his head and saw that the person who spoke was the old man sitting cross-legged. Berserker vessel? Su Ming took a deep breath. He had some guesses before this. From the beast skin scrolls, he understood that berserker vessels were extremely valuable items. Only those in the Transcendence realm could own and create them. It was difficult for those in the blood solidification realm to get their hands on them. Even if they did, it was usually passed down from a tribe. The tribe also needed to be able to protect the item so that it would not be taken away by those in the Transcendence realm. This item is damaged and can't be used anymore, but it was created by those in the Transcendence realm. I'll sell it for 1,000 stone coins, the old man said slowly. Su Ming looked at the blue plate. His eyes were filled with desire and envy. Yet he only had 5 stone coins on him. He could not afford it. Su Ming sighed and cast a few more glances at the blue plate before he reluctantly left. I wonder when I'll be able to have my own berserker vessel. Su Ming mumbled to himself as he walked through the square. There were many people selling beast skin stalls in the square, but Su Ming did not see any other berserker vessels after walking through the entire square. He did see some cloud gauze grass being sold by different people. The price was slightly higher. Each plant was sold for 1 stone coin, almost the same price as dark dragon saliva. The sky was getting dark. It was almost dusk. The setting sun shone on the ground in the distance, but there were more people in the square. It was bustling with activity. Su Ming looked at the sky and continued wandering around the place. He even went into some tents made of grass. The items sold in those tents were also sold. The prices were high, but the quality of the items was guaranteed. There were also quite a lot of people going in and out of those tents. Under Su Ming's watchful eyes, he saw some of the berserkers who came to the place. They did not seem to be buying anything, but were instead carrying baskets on their backs and walking into some tents made of grass, just like him, to sell their items to the owners of the tents. When Su Ming saw this, a smile appeared on his lips. He had been observing the place for the entire afternoon, and now he had noticed all sorts of details. Once he organized everything in his mind, he understood most of the rules of the trade in this place. When Su Ming saw this, a smile appeared on his lips. He had been observing the place for the entire afternoon. He had noticed all sorts of details. Once he organized his thoughts, he understood most of the rules of trading in this place. Su Ming looked around cautiously and quickly took off the basket on his back. He opened the beast skin wrapped around his body and put it on. He also put on the beast skins he had prepared in the basket. Finally, he took out a black beast skin that looked like a robe and put it on, wrapping his body tightly. Because of it, Su Ming's face could no longer be seen. In fact, he looked incredibly bloated, and compared to his previous frail self, he was practically another person. Su Ming stretched his body and tightened the layers of beast skins he wore. He looked at the basket. There was another item inside. It was something he had prepared for this trip. It may have been heavy on the way, but it had its uses. Su Ming lifted the woven basket and slung it on his back. He lowered his head and walked a few steps before he stopped. After a moment of pensive silence, he bent his body so that he looked like a hunchback and quickly walked towards the tent made of grass and wood he had chosen earlier. The tent was the dimmest. The people who came and went in the tent during the afternoon were all like Su Ming. They hid their faces as if they did not want others to recognize them. It may have been Su Ming's first time in the square, but his observation during the afternoon had allowed him to understand most of the details of the place. He did not immediately step into the tent he had chosen. Instead, he walked around the area where the light was dimmer. He would occasionally observe the tent. Not long after, the tent was opened from the inside, and a man with his appearance hidden walked out. He hurriedly left the square. Su Ming had seen a lot of people like this during the afternoon. When he was certain that those who left would not be chased by anyone, he took advantage of the fact that there were no other people in the tent and walked quickly towards the tent. Without any hesitation, he lifted the flap and walked in. The moment he entered the tent, Su Ming immediately felt someone's gaze on him. It was a middle-aged man with his upper body bare. He was sitting cross-legged in the tent. There was a bonfire in front of him. As the fire burned, it let out crackling sounds. One of the middle-aged man's eyes was empty, but there was an aggressive, brilliant light in his other eye. At that moment, he was staring at Su Ming without a single word. The light from the fire is a little blinding. Su Ming's entire body was covered by bee skins. He was not worried that the man would see his face. He spoke slowly. His voice was slightly hoarse, slightly different from his normal voice. The one-eyed man looked at Su Ming for a while before averting his gaze. In his eyes, besides the fact that Su Ming did not have any qi, he was no different from the other people who came here. He may not have sensed any qi from Su Ming's body, but if he could enter the tent without any sense of unfamiliarity and knew the rules, then he would not be a nobody. He lifted his right hand and pressed it against the bonfire. Immediately, the bonfire became much dimmer, causing the light in the tent to also become dimmer. Take it out. If it's something good, I'll give you a good price. The man withdrew his right hand and spoke slowly. Su Ming's gaze spread out from the beast's skin covering his face and sized up the man. Suddenly he laughed. His laughter was also hoarse, and it echoed in the tent, causing the man to frown involuntarily. At the instant he frowned, Su Ming lifted his right hand and swung it. Immediately, a medicinal fragrance filled the air, and a round object charged towards the man. The man grabbed it, and at the instant he placed it in front of his eyes to examine it. A brilliant light shone in his right eye, and he sucked in a sharp breath uncontrollably. How much is this thing worth? Su Ming's hoarse voice rang out slowly. What is this medicine? Where did you get it? What are its effects? The man stared at the item in his hand for a while. He lifted his head and looked at Su Ming solemnly. There was a strange glint in his eyes. I saw this beast on my way to the square. Su Ming did not answer the man's question. Instead, he spoke suddenly. As he spoke, he took down the basket on his back and placed it by his side. He lifted his right hand and grabbed at something. The basket swayed for a moment, and a tied-up mink raccoon was brought out by Su Ming and placed on the ground. The mink raccoon looked dispirited, but there was a fierce glint in its eyes. However, there were some unhealed wounds on its body, and it could not escape since it was tied up. The man was stunned. It was clear that he did not understand the meaning behind Su Ming's words. He swept his gaze past the mink raccoon. It was just a normal wild beast and did not attract much attention from him. That's why I caught it. Look, it's still alive. Su Ming's voice was languid and hoarse, but it sounded a little strange in the dark tent. What are you talking about? The man frowned. I'm talking about it. It's still alive. Do you know why I caught it? Because it's a little too curious. It's been following behind me for a long time. Su Ming lifted his left hand and caressed the mink raccoon's body. However, the moment his hand touched the unhealed wounds on the mink raccoon's body, the mink raccoon suddenly shuddered. There was no pain scream or even a roar. There was only a shudder, and its entire body turned into a mist of blood, as if its blood was burning. Under the man's dumbfounded gaze, the beast's entire body dissipated, leaving behind only a pile of black and red bones that intersected with each other. Now it's dead. Su Ming touched the bones left behind by the wild beast with his left hand. Immediately, the bones turned into powder and fell to the ground. The man took a sharp breath. He instinctively stood up and took a few steps back. His eyes were filled with terror and shock that he could not hide. He was stunned for a moment, and when he looked at Su Ming again, his gaze was filled with fear and respect. Fallen berserker. Su Ming let out a harumph. The man shuddered. He was just about to explain when Su Ming waved his hand, as if he was getting impatient. Tell me, how much is the item you're holding in your hand worth? The effect of this item is simple. It can increase the effects of herbs you take when you practice. As for other questions, you're a little too curious, Su Ming said slowly. The man's face was pale. The scene just now had shocked him. He did not even feel the circulation of qi in Su Ming's body before the wild beast turned into a mist of blood right before him. This item. The man calmed down his thoughts and lowered his head to look at the round pill in his hand. Senior, I've never seen this item before. This is... The man spoke hesitantly. If it was a normal customer, he would not have acted this way. However, he was shocked by the scene just now and did not dare to offend Su Ming. You can test it now. If there's no effect, I'll leave. If there's an effect, then we'll talk about its value. Su Ming spoke unhurriedly as he sat there. The man let out a sigh of relief. Once he bowed respectfully, he took out a bell from his bosom and shook it lightly. Immediately, tinkling sounds spread out. A barely noticeable glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He looked at the bell and clenched his left hand that was hidden in his robes. There was still some scattering blood powder left on his left hand. Chapter 25. Su Ming was very nervous. The man's chi far surpassed Lei Chen's. He should be around the 5th or 6th level of the blood solidification realm. Su Ming could not fight against such a person. If the man tried anything funny, then Su Ming would not be able to avoid it. But he wanted a large amount of cloud gauze grass. If that was the case, then he would need a lot of stone coins. Therefore, he had no choice but to take the risk. Moreover, after that time when he was chasing after Yuchi in the forest, he felt that some of his thoughts seemed to have changed. All these years, he had read from the beast skin book that the elder gave him, and some of the knowledge described in it had been deeply engraved in his mind. He had a feeling that if he could not defeat the man with his level of cultivation, then he could only make the man doubt him in other areas, so that he would not act rashly. That was why he chose to hide his face and brought a wild beast with him before he came. He wanted to intimidate the man at the right moment. By the looks of it, the effect was pretty good, but Su Ming did not let his guard down. In truth, Su Ming was not the only one who was nervous in the tent. The man was even more nervous than Su Ming. Occasionally, he would look at the spot where the wild beast had died. When he saw the crushed bones, his heart would race against his chest. It was not out of excitement, but out of fear. In fact, to him, the person before him who was completely covered in beast skins was filled with a mysterious air that he could not see through. That mysterious air, along with the shocking scene just now, gave the man a sense of pressure that far surpassed the anxiety Su Ming felt at that moment. This person's actions are experienced, his words are calm, and his attacks are even more ruthless. He must be one of the hidden evil barbarians in the nearby forest. But, judging from his words just now, he seems to be very reasonable. It's just that this strange medicine probably won't have much effect. As the man was feeling anxious, footsteps came from outside the tent. The flap of the tent was lifted and a man walked in. The man had a wooden expression on his face. Once he entered the tent, he did not say a single word. He stood by the side and waited for the one-eyed man's orders. The moment the man entered, Su Ming cast a casual glance at him. The man's chi was not strong. He was also at the 2nd level of the blood solidification realm, just like Su Ming. Eat it, and this. The one-eyed man didn't hesitate. He took out the medicinal pill in his hand and handed a medicinal herb to the big man. The burly man's expression remained the same. After receiving it, he immediately popped it into his mouth and chewed a few times. Then he sat cross-legged to the side and circulated the blood in his body. However, his expression quickly changed. He seemed to be very surprised. Not long after, he opened his eyes and looked at the one-eyed man in confusion. There's no effect. It's just that I feel a little stronger than usual when I swallow the spirit spell grass. It's about a level or so. Hearing this, the one-eyed man's pupils shrank and his heart began to beat faster. He knew what this additional level meant. If it was an ordinary medicinal herb, then perhaps it wouldn't be that obvious. But if it was used by someone at the 8th or 9th level of blood condensation, then its value was practically immeasurable. Even if a normal herb is worth 10 stone coins, this thing would at most be worth 1 stone coin. But if it's an herb worth 100 stone coins or even 1,000 stone coins, then this additional level. The more the one-eyed man thought about it, the more excited he became. However, he wasn't sure if this thing would have the same effect on high-grade herbs. It's a pity I don't have a lot of stone coins on me anymore. After a moment of silence, he calmly quelled the excitement in his heart. Once he sent the man away, he stood respectfully before Su Ming and forced out a smile. Senior, this medicine is really amazing. How about this? I'll give you 30 stone coins for one. What do you think? The one-eyed man didn't dare offend Su Ming. To him, Su Ming was a fallen berserker. If he could bring out this kind of herb, then he was definitely not a normal person. 30 stone coins? The price made Su Ming's heart pound against his chest, but his voice suddenly became cold. This, senior, 30 stone coins is the limit. I'm also not sure if this thing has the same effect on high-grade herbs. The one-eyed man quickly spoke, but before he could finish, he was interrupted by Su Ming. No matter what herb you take, this thing will have an additional level of effect. If it wasn't because I need a berserker vessel, I wouldn't sell it. The one-eyed man struggled for a moment before he gritted his teeth and nodded. Senior, how many do you have? If I include the one you ruined just now, I still have one more. As Su Ming spoke, he took out a small bottle from his bosom. There was one scattering dust inside. When the man heard Su Ming's words, he was dazed and his heart ached. Just as he was hesitating, he saw Su Ming stand up and put away the small bottle in his bosom. He lifted his left hand, which had turned the small beast into blood mist. His eyes also shone with a sinister light under the skin that covered his face. He suddenly remembered the one pill he used in his experiment and quickly spoke. Senior, this 50 stone coins. This is really my limit. Su Ming did not want to stay there for too long. A glint appeared in his eyes, and he said resolutely, All right, if you include the one from before, you'll have a total of 100 stone coins. The one-eyed man hesitated for a moment before he immediately took out a leather bag from his bosom and handed it to Su Ming respectfully. There were 2 white stone coins in the bag. The value of a stone coin was determined by its color. Gray was secondary, black was 10, white was 50, and if there was purple, it would be 100. Give me the black stone coins. Su Ming looked at them and suddenly said. The one-eyed man was stunned, but he did not ask any questions. He took out 10 black stone coins and handed them to Su Ming again. Su Ming took the stone coins and placed them in the bag. He threw the bottle to the man and picked up the basket on the ground. Without looking at the one-eyed man again, he turned around and walked out of the tent. Once he left the tent, Su Ming did not act rashly. Instead, he wandered around the square. The moon was bright and the stars were sparse. Torches could be seen everywhere, but the number of people in the square did not decrease by much. However, most of the people who came to buy or sell at this time were dressed like Su Ming. He wandered around the square a few times. Once Su Ming was certain that no one was paying attention to him. He used his fastest speed to buy 60 of the cloud gauze grass that he had chosen during the day. He then changed his attire in a secluded corner and left in a hurry. When he arrived at the place he had agreed to meet with Lei Chun, he saw Lei Chun yawning as he waited for him. Su Ming did not speak. He walked past Lei Chun. Lei Chun was startled, but he also followed without batting an eyelid. The two of them, one in front and one behind, quickly disappeared into the dark forest. Su Ming changed many directions as he ran. He did not rest at all. He only stopped when the sky turned dark the next day. His face was pale, and he was terrified. Lei Chun was panting heavily. He might not understand, but he would not ask. Su Ming threw 5 stone coins towards Lei Chun when he caught them. Once he caught them, he immediately smiled in excitement. The two of them rested for a while before Su Ming stood up again and ran with Lei Chun towards the direction of the tribe. This time he did not stop. He ran at full speed. His speed was usually even faster than Lei Chun's. His level of cultivation might not be as high as Lei Chun's, but his speed was enough to make Lei Chun speechless. I gained quite a lot this time. I was planning to buy 5 cloud gauze grass to test if I couldn't sell the medicinal pills. I didn't expect things to go so smoothly. Su Ming was deep in thought as he moved forward. The one-eyed man must have been frightened by me. But I can't let my guard down. I have to return to the tribe as soon as possible. Su Ming was cautious along the way. Even if they were already far away from the square, he would still change his direction occasionally. He even used his experience in the forest to get rid of his tracks. When the sun was high up in the sky and there was still some time before noon, Su Ming and Lei Chun saw their tribe in the distance. Su Ming was finally at ease when he arrived. A smile appeared on his face. We're finally home. Su Ming, you still haven't told me. How did you know that Bai Ling was from Dark Dragon Tribe yesterday? Lei Chen was panting. When Su Ming slowed down, he quickly asked the question that had been bothering him for a long time. Bai Ling? The image of the tall and beautiful girl appeared in Su Ming's mind. The girl's nose was wrinkled and her eyes sparkled. She exuded a wild beauty. I didn't know she was from Dark Dragon Tribe. A smile appeared on Su Ming's lips. The girl called Bai Ling was the most beautiful person he had ever seen in his life. Impossible. If you didn't know, how could you say it so easily? Lei Chen had been thinking about this question for a long time, but he could not find an answer. When he saw that Su Ming still did not want to tell him, he became anxious. Su Ming cast a glance at Lei Chen and laughed. Lei Chen, don't tell me you like her? Nonsense. Lei Chen shook his head vigorously and mumbled. She's too thin. I don't like her. I like plump ones. Lei Chen scratched his head. He had always liked plump girls in the tribe since he was young. It was still the same even now. Su Ming smiled and joked with Lei Chen as they ran back to the tribe. Their carefree smiles and friendship gradually spread through the area with the wind in the freezing winter. The three people following behind Bai Ling have the dark dragon totem on their bodies. The only people who like to draw dark dragons on their bodies are the people from Dark Dragon Tribe. Su Ming smiled as they approached the tribe. When Lei Chen heard this, he immediately smiled bitterly. He did not expect it to be so simple. Su Ming and Lei Chen returned to the tribe safely. When they reached their own house, Su Ming took out the cloud gauze grass he bought from the square. There was a look of anticipation in his eyes. Mountain Spirit, I wonder what effect it will have after I create it. The elder told me not to go out for the time being. I'll go and come back quickly. It shouldn't take up too much time. Su Ming made up his mind. At that moment, in a square far away from Dark Mountain Tribe, something huge was happening. The cause of this was a round pill. Once Su Ming left, the one-eyed man hesitated for a long time in the tent. He did not meet any other customers who came to trade with him. Instead, in the midst of his hesitation, he gritted his teeth and took the small bottle containing the medicinal pills before rushing to the gigantic purple tent belonging to the owner of the square. Chapter 26. He waited outside the tent for a long time before he was told that he could enter. Only then did he enter the tent respectfully. An hour later, he left the tent respectfully with an ecstatic look on his face. There were two people sitting in the purple tent. Both of them were old men with grizzled hair, but their eyes were bright and full of expression. In front of them was a very ordinary, empty bottle. One of them was an old man in white robes. He held a medicinal pill between his fingers and looked at it for a while. Then, a glint appeared in his eyes, along with surprise and hesitation. He fell in a deep thought for a moment before he brought the medicinal pill to his nose and sniffed it. He closed his eyes and opened them after a long while. It's just as he said. It does have an unbelievable effect. I've been in Windstream Tribe for many years, and I've never seen this kind of medicine. By the looks of it, it doesn't look like an ancient medicine. There's no sign of age on it. It must have been created not too long ago. Just what is this? It's a pity that a long time has passed. That fallen berserker is not someone we should provoke, or else we'd be able to find out where this item came from, the other old man said slowly. Don't act recklessly. The person who can bring out this treasure is either a berserker at the highest level of the blood solidification realm or a fallen berserker in the false dust realm. Brother Curse, I'll take this back to the tribe. Perhaps the elder of Windstream Tribe will recognize it. As the old man in white spoke, he carefully placed the medicinal pill into the small bottle. With a wave of his right hand, the small bottle disappeared without a trace. That's how it should be. The old man nodded his head. This item is too important. I'll take my leave first. If I have any results, I'll come back and tell you. The old man in white stood up and wrapped his fist in his palm towards the old man named Curse. He quickly walked out of the purple tent, and with one step, his body instantly twisted and turned into a layer of white mist that charged into the sky. Very soon, he disappeared without a trace. When the sky gradually brightened, there was a large tribe located in a vast grassland some distance away from the square. The tribe was so big that it was like a city. There were 6 other tribes that were similar to Dark Mountain tribe surrounding it. Right in the middle of the tribe was a gigantic city made of mud. The city was majestic, and it looked like a huge beast had descended upon the land. There were more than thousands of people in the city, and it was not something that Dark Mountain tribe could compare to. As for the 6 tribes outside the Mud City, they were directly affiliated to Windstream tribe. Some of them were directly conquered by Windstream tribe, while some of them came to Windstream tribe to seek protection due to some accident. In the end, they became a part of Windstream tribe. Windstream tribe was a middle-sized tribe, but they were one of the weaker ones among the middle-sized tribes. After all, the area around Dark Mountain was considered to be a rather remote place among the Berserker tribe. Yet it was precisely because of this that Windstream tribe became the ruler of the area. They ruled over the area and received tributes from countless smaller tribes. They were also the only tribe member who had connections to those who were of a higher level. At that moment, when the sun rose slightly in the distance, a white fog rushed over. It gathered outside the Mud City and turned into an old man in a white robe. The old man's face was grave as he immediately walked into the Mud City. Along the way, all the people from Windstream tribe that he ran into would stop and bow to him respectfully. At the center of the Mud City was an altar that was completely black. The altar was in the shape of a pentagon and was about 100 feet tall. There were pictures of birds and beasts carved on it, and it gave off a primitive feeling. The old man in white stood respectfully under the altar. After a while, a gentle voice traveled from the altar. "Sure, hi, what is it?" The old man in white took a deep breath and spoke in a low voice. "Elder, I found a medicine I've never seen before in Chu Ranch Square. This medicine has unbelievable effects." "Oh, let me have a look." The gentle voice from the altar traveled into the air. The old man in white lifted his right hand, and a flash of light appeared on his palm. Immediately, a small bottle appeared. The small bottle seemed to be guided by some mysterious force and floated up slowly towards the altar. It was quiet around them. Only the moaning of the wind could be heard occasionally, causing the old man in white's robes to flutter. He stood there, unmoving, waiting quietly. After a while, the gentle voice traveled into the air again. However, this time, there was a hint of surprise in it. "There's only one of this?" "Only one," the old man in white immediately answered. "I've never seen this medicine before. There's a structure in this medicine that I don't understand, and it's clear that it was just created not too long ago. Who went to the square to trade for it?" There was a hint of seriousness in the gentle voice. "It was a fallen berserker," the old man in white whispered. "Find him. Use everything you have to find him. Tell him to join Windstream tribe, and I'll give him the status of a guest." The gentle voice traveled into the air. The old man in white took a deep breath and obeyed respectfully. Even if he knew that the medicine was extraordinary, he did not expect that the elder would want to make this person a guest of Windstream tribe. The status of a guest was extremely high. Besides the tribe leader and the elder, the other guests had the same status as the leaders of the tribe. As the old man in white left, the order was carried out by the entire Windstream tribe. It was as if they had cast a huge net to search for the fallen berserker. At that moment, Su Ming was in his own house in Dark Mountain tribe. He had made his decision. On the second morning, he left the tribe alone. He entered the forest and ran towards Black Flame Mountain. With familiarity, Su Ming leapt through the forest. Ever since he reached the second level of the blood solidification realm, his agility and speed had increased by quite a bit. Even Lei Chen had to use all his strength to barely keep up with him. Now that he was in the familiar forest, Su Ming's speed increased. By noon, he had already arrived at the foot of Black Flame Mountain. With one leap, he climbed up Black Flame Mountain. Once he returned to his cave for quenching herbs, Su Ming put down the basket on his back. There were a lot of herbs in it. They were all prepared for the quenching of herbs. Xiaohong was not in the cave. It must have gone out to play. Su Ming looked around the cave. Once he was certain that there was nothing wrong, he sat down cross-legged on the ground and focused on circulating the blood in his body. As the 10 blood veins flashed, his body reached its peak condition, both inside and outside of his body. Su Ming even had a feeling that he was about to reach a breakthrough. It was as if the 11th blood vein was about to manifest. When the elder helped me with the true Berserker's awakening, he said that I would be able to reach the 3rd level soon. It hasn't been long, and I can feel that I have more chi. The ancient Berserker arts are amazing. Su Ming opened his eyes. There was a flash in his eyes. In his mind, he remembered the day when he was covered in black filth. I might as well stop quenching herbs for now and reach the 2nd level in one go. Su Ming fell into a moment of pensive silence before he brought out an item from his bosom. It was the sky stone. He cast a glance at the herb and swallowed a scattering dust, then plucked one of the leaves from the herb and swallowed it. He closed his eyes and meditated once again. After a while, Su Ming's body was drenched in sweat. The 11th blood vein was about to manifest. After a few hours, a muffled sound came from within Su Ming's body. The 11th blood vein manifested, and an even stronger chi erupted from within Su Ming's body. Su Ming opened his eyes. There was a bright glow in them. The 3rd level of the blood solidification realm. He stood up as he mumbled to himself. His face was filled with excitement. He stretched his body and took the herbs in his hands. He started the process of quenching mountain spirit according to the method in his memory. Su Ming was no longer as ignorant as he was a few months ago. He was very familiar with the method of quenching herbs. He was even more experienced in using the fire in the area. As the temperature increased, Su Ming took off his leather clothes and stood beside the stone cauldron. Sometimes he would sniff the herbs, and sometimes he would crush them with his hands and throw them into the cauldron. Time passed by without him noticing. The sky darkened, and the forest became quiet. Even the sounds of the birds and beasts became so weak that they could barely be heard. As the sky darkened, the moon hung high in the sky. However, the moon that night was different from usual. The color of the moon was much redder. At first glance, it looked as if there was a blood moon in the sky. This strange phenomenon seemed to have turned into a strange aura that enveloped the land. It was especially so for the area around Dark Mountain. The sounds of the birds and beasts disappeared. Even the weak cries stopped abruptly. It was as if they did not dare to make a sound. Within the forest at the foot of Black Flame Mountain, a red blur flashed past. That red blur was the little monkey. Its face was grave, and its eyes were filled with caution. Occasionally, it would lift its head to look at the red moon, and panic would appear on its face. As it moved forward, it hesitated for a moment. It did not know that Su Ming had already returned. It immediately changed its direction and no longer headed towards Black Flame Mountain. In a flash, it disappeared into the forest and hid itself. As the sky darkened, the color of the moon became brighter. Eventually, the entire Dark Mountain seemed to be dyed red. At that moment, a faint roar came from within Dark Mountain. As time passed, the roar became more and more intense. In the end, it even spread out of Dark Mountain. The cries seemed to be filled with endless hatred. When it entered the ears of the people, it would make their hearts tremble. It was as if their souls were about to be shaken. If they listened to the cries for a long time, they would feel as if their blood was boiling. It would make them feel fear. The cries echoed in the sky and seemed to resonate with the blood-red moon in the sky. It caused the entire Dark Mountain to be enveloped in a strange and mysterious atmosphere. That night, the 3 tribes near Dark Mountain were all on high alert. The normal members of Dark Mountain Tribe had all returned to their houses under the protection of the tribe's berserkers. They did not go out unless absolutely necessary. All the berserkers were also personally led by the tribe leader to protect the tribe. The elder stood at the highest point of the tribe. It was a platform made of giant wood. He held a black bone staff in his hands and looked into the distance. There was a hint of worry in his eyes. He had noticed Su Ming leaving, but he did not expect that today would be the night of the blood moon that would appear once every 3 years. The blood moon this time was also clearly several months earlier than usual. This strange phenomenon made him even more surprised and bewildered. Fire! After a long while, the elder suddenly spoke. Immediately, the tribesmen who had surrounded the giant wooden platform took out torches, and placed them under the giant wooden platform, causing it to instantly burn. The elder was inside, and it was as if he was in a sea of fire, but his expression was calm as he mumbled a strange incantation. It was not only Dark Mountain Tribe. At that moment, in another direction, a similar scene appeared in Dark Dragon Tribe as well. The elder of Dark Dragon Tribe wore a loose robe, and his hair was disheveled. It was hard to tell whether he was a man or a woman. He held the skull of a strange beast with a single horn in his hand. He raised it high above his head, and a piercing sound came from his mouth. Not far away from the tribe members of Dark Dragon Tribe stood a beautiful girl. Her face was pale as she lifted her head to look at the blood-red moon in the sky. Chapter 27. The girl was Bai Ling. She was terrified. She looked at the elder of the tribe performing the ritual and the other tribe members around her. Their faces were pale and filled with fear. The blood moon only appears once every 3 years when all the snow in Dark Mountain has melted. At that time, there will be enough beasts to perform the ritual, and we will be able to avoid the disaster. But now, it has been brought forward. This is... Bai Ling bit her lip and became even more afraid as she looked around. At that moment, Su Ming was in the fire karst cave, fully focused on creating the medicine. His entire body was drenched in sweat as he stared at the stone cauldron, constantly changing the strength of the fire as he observed it. Before long, muffled rumbling sounds came from the cauldron. Su Ming smiled bitterly and wiped off his sweat. He knew he had failed again. This mountain spirit is much harder to make than scattering dust. Su Ming shook his head. He opened the cauldron and saw green smoke coming out of it. It was spicy. He sighed. Just as he was about to continue, he felt the qi in his body rumbling. It was as if it was out of his control. He frowned and looked around but did not find anything wrong. Strange. Su Ming scratched his head. After a moment of silence, he continued to create medicine. At that moment, on the other side of Dark Mountain was Black Mountain Tribe. It was very different from Dark Mountain Tribe and Dark Dragon Tribe. There might have been a large number of tribe members standing within Black Mountain Tribe, but when they looked at the sky, their eyes were filled with bloodthirsty excitement. Roars came from their mouths. Not only the berserkers, but even the normal members of the tribe were doing the same. Their roars gradually merged into one and turned into a wave of sound that echoed in the air. In the center of the crowd, there was a small mountain made of countless red stones. A skinny old man in a black robe stood on top of the small mountain. The old man's eyes were cold as he stared at the blood moon in the sky. A cruel smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. In the past, there was a fire berserker tribe in this vast land. They had incredible power and could control the fire in the world. If they were angry, they could burn the sky and turn the world around. They were so famous that even those who were not part of the berserker tribe were afraid of them. They were one of the 8 great tribes of the berserker tribe. The skinny old man spoke in a hoarse voice. It was as if he was mumbling to himself, but also as if he was telling the world. But this tribe wanted to steal the heavenly vessel and was punished by the god of berserkers. After 9 days, 9 hours, and 9 breaths, all the fire berserkers other than the berserkers were burnt to ashes and their souls scattered. But the fire berserkers were so strong that even after such a thing, the berserker tribe members did not die. They wanted to betray the berserker god. The moment the god punished them, the berserker tribe, the berserker clan was killed. That battle shook the heavens. The elder of the fire berserkers might have died in battle, but before he died, he cast an art that even the god of berserkers would be wary of. It protected all the berserkers in his tribe who had not died so that they could live forever. A strange light appeared in the skinny old man's eyes. He raised his right hand, and his 5 withered fingers were immediately surrounded by black gas, which turned into ferocious ghostly figures. But he was wrong. He might have protected all the berserkers in the fire berserker tribe, but the god of berserkers used the eternal creation art to make all the berserkers lose their human bodies and turn them into the wings of the blood moon. From then on, they were reduced to wings of the moon that could never see the light of day, lost their minds, and only had bloodthirst. Their resentment, hatred, anger, and sorrow turned into a monstrous grudge. Once every 3 years, the moon will be dyed red, turning the moon into blood so that they can come out once. Today, I, Black Mountain Tribe's elder, by 2, will help you. The skinny old man let out a long, ghastly laugh. He bit the tip of his tongue and coughed out a mouthful of blood. At the same time, the small mountain formed by the countless blood-red stones under his feet exploded with a bang. The countless red stones flew into the air. Black Mountain Tribe's elder, by 2, floated strangely in midair. He spread his arms wide, and madness and excitement appeared on his face. The countless red stones spun rapidly in midair and formed a gigantic picture. The picture was circular, and within it was a crescent moon. The entire picture was crimson red. Wings of the moon, wake up. Wake up from your long slumber. By 2 coughed out another mouthful of blood. His blood turned into blood mist and fused into the gigantic picture in the sky, causing the picture to let out a loud rumbling sound. It exploded abruptly, turning into a large amount of red mist that spread outwards. At that moment, the entire dark mountain trembled. The tremors were incredibly clear, as if the earth was shaking. It caused a commotion within Dark Mountain Tribe. It was the same for Dark Dragon Tribe. At that moment, Su Ming, who was in Black Flame Mountain's cave, could clearly feel the entire mountain trembling. His expression changed. As it trembled, he could hear faint roars coming from the deeper parts of the cave. His heart trembled, and he immediately gave up on the quenching process. He took a few steps back and crawled out of the cave. The moment his head popped out of the cave, he almost let out a cry of surprise. He saw the blood moon in the sky. Blood moons? Su Ming's face instantly turned pale. At the same time, a thick stench of blood immediately spread out from Black Flame Mountain. Su Ming did not dare hesitate. He knew about the blood moon and had even calculated the time it would appear. Yet he did not expect that the blood moon would appear earlier. He immediately turned around and went back into the cave through the small hole. He knew that if he was outside, there would be no place for him to hide. He would not make it in time either. Once he was back in the cave, he took out the horn as if he had gone mad and started chipping away at the wall beside him. The roars from deep within the cave became clearer. There were also other sounds mixed within it. Su Ming's eyes were bloodshot. Fortunately, he was familiar with the place, and the horn was incredibly sharp. In just a moment, he had dug out a hole. Su Ming immediately crawled in and used the stones he had dug out to block the entrance. He did not care about the heat coming from the temporary hole. The moment he crawled into the hole, a gust of red mist rushed out from deep within the cave. Once it filled the entire cave, it spilled out from the exit. Su Ming could hear the roars clearly. Under the light of the blood moon in the sky, the 5 summits of Dark Mountain erupted like a volcano. Loud rumbles shook the sky, and a large amount of red mist erupted from the mountain. That fog seemed to have always existed within the 5 summits of Dark Mountain. As it gushed out, it immediately covered the sky. Dark Dragon Mountain's fog seeped out from the cracks on the mountain. Some of it even gushed out from the spot where Su Ming had obtained Dark Dragon saliva. If Su Ming took a closer look, he would be able to see that the Dark Dragons had been chasing him all these years. The areas they did not dare to enter and had to avoid were the places where most of the fog gushed out. It was the same for the other summits, especially Black Flame Mountain. The mist that erupted from it was even more shocking. As the mist filled the air, a buzzing sound reverberated in the air. There was also the sound of wings flapping mixed together, forming a terrifying sound of death. Streaks of red shadows came out from the 5 mountains along with the mist. Sharp roars echoed through the world. Those red shadows were strange beasts with wings and red eyes. They were only the size of a palm, had 6 limbs, and had human faces. Their expressions were filled with madness and bloodlust. They were the wings of the moon. The wings of the moon were so dense that they covered the sky and the earth. There were at least tens of thousands of them. They covered the sky and the earth. As they let out piercing roars, they charged towards Black Mountain Tribe, Dark Mountain Tribe, Dark Dragon Tribe, and all the other beasts in the forest. They had no intelligence and were filled with hatred. They were bloodthirsty and only knew how to kill mercilessly. They drank fresh blood, especially the blood of the Berserker tribe. It could make them go mad. They could even ignore the wild beasts and charge straight towards the Berserker tribe. The people of Dark Mountain Tribe were in an uproar. Terrified screams reverberated in the air. Chen Xian's face was pale. She held on to Bei Ling tightly. Bei Ling's face was also pale. Lei Chen was in the distance. He was extremely agitated. The first thing he did was to look for Su Ming, but he did not see him. He was not only worried, he was also shocked by the scene in the sky. The panicking normal tribe members were immediately stopped by the berserkers in the tribe. Gradually, all the people in the tribe turned their gazes towards the burning wooden platform and the person who was looking at the sky. The elder's face was pale. It was just that no one could see it under the light of the fire. His pupils shrank. He saw the red mist in the distance and heard the faint, crazed roars coming from it. How could this be? Not only did it happen earlier, even their numbers have increased by so much. There were only a few thousand of them in the past. He took a deep breath and shouted without hesitation. Normal tribesmen, hide immediately. Berserkers, listen up. Take out all the meat you've stored. Cut open your wounds and wait for my orders. The elder's body trembled slightly. He lowered his head and looked at his tribesmen before he closed his eyes. The same scene was happening in Dark Dragon Tribe as well. Bai Ling looked around at her clansmen who were listening to her elder's orders in fear. The fear in her eyes deepened. She would never forget what happened 9 years ago when she was still a child. She saw one of her playmates being captured by countless wings of the moon before he left. That playmate cried shrilly as he disappeared into the mist and was dragged into Dark Mountain. What awaited him was only a slow death. The blood moon in the sky was faintly discernible under the cover of the fog. However, the red shadows that whizzed past the fog gradually approached. The large number of wings of the moon split into 3 groups and headed straight for the 3 nearby tribes. In Dark Mountain Tribe, the elder stared at the sky. The moment the wings of the moon closed in, he swung the bone staff in his right hand. Immediately, the sea of fire beneath him spread out and covered the entire tribe. However, there was something strange about the sea of fire. It did not burn the plants and houses. Instead, it surrounded the tribe as if it did not exist. Throw the meat! The elder let out a low growl, and immediately, the berserkers in the tribe threw the bloody, wild beasts into the sky in fear. Chapter 28. Almost at the same time, the elder let out a low growl. A large number of wings of the moon charged through the sky that was covered by the blood fog and covered the blood moon. They charged through the fog and descended above Dark Mountain Tribe. Piercing screeches replaced all other sounds in the world and became the only sound in the night of the blood moon. Wild beasts that had been dyed in blood were thrown into the air by the tribe members. Before they could even land on the ground, they were immediately surrounded by the wings of the moon that looked like a blood cloud. Shrill screeches filled the air as the wings of the moon covered the wild beasts. Their sharp teeth pierced into their bodies, and they instantly turned into withered corpses. Even their blood and life were devoured by the wings of the moon. All that was left were the dried corpses that were only skin and bones. They fell to the ground and twitched a few times before dying. Many of the countless wings of the moon in the sky ignored the wild beasts that were thrown into the air and charged towards the tribe below. Their bloodshot eyes were filled with cruelty and bloodlust. Their target was the berserkers in the tribe. Screams, cries, and angry roars mixed together and formed a song that resonated with the screeches of the wings of the moon. It started playing in the strange moonlit night. However, the sea of fire that surrounded the entire tribe was like a sturdy barrier, causing the wings of the moon to fly away the moment they got close. It was as if the fire that could not burn the houses was fatal to them. Throw them again. The elder looked at the sky gravely from within the sea of fire. Immediately, more tribe members started throwing the wild beasts that they had stored during the winter out of fear. It was as if they were feeding and offering them to the wings of the moon in the sky to devour the wild beasts. Time passed by slowly. When all the wild beasts that they had stored during the winter had become food for the wings of the moon and turned into withered corpses that fell to the ground, the wings of the moon in the sky began to dive down in large groups due to their bloodlust. It was as if they wanted to break through the barrier of the sea of fire and descend into the tribe to enjoy the blood of the berserkers that made their eyes red. The elder waved his right hand, and the sea of fire instantly turned into a giant whirlpool. It spun with a loud rumbling sound as it fought against the wings of the moon in the sky alone. At the same time, arrows shot out from the tribe and pierced through the sea of fire to fight against the wings of the moon. However, to the wings of the moon that possessed strange life and were almost undying, this kind of damage could not affect them at all. The sound of the wings flapping and the piercing screeches made the people of Dark Mountain Tribe anxious. Not long after, a few wings of the moon charged through the sea of fire and charged through the tribe, causing chaos in Dark Mountain Tribe. The same scene was playing out in Dark Dragon Tribe. Only the Black Dragon Tribe was acting strangely. All the tribe members were prostrating themselves on the ground, not daring to move. In the sky, the elder of Black Mountain Tribe, by two, had his arms spread wide open. There was a zealous look on his face as he started chanting a strange incantation towards the sky. There were countless wings of the moon circling around him. There was also a large number of wings of the moon on his body. Their sharp teeth pierced into Baitu's body and sucked his blood. However, Baitu seemed to have lost a sense of pain. He did not resist at all. Instead, the fanatical look on his face became even stronger. As his face gradually turned pale, the strange chant from his mouth became louder. Offer my blood, O fire berserker tribe from ancient times. You have become undying and have turned into wings of the moon. You have devoured my berserker blood, so you must fuse your fire berserker blood into my body. Dee-hee boom boom boom. Baitu roared towards the sky. Immediately, a piercing black light erupted from his body. As the black light spread out, all the wings of the moon on his body screeched. Their bodies shrank rapidly and the red light in their eyes dimmed. Within a moment, they seemed to have lost their lives and fell from Baitu's body. But more wings of the moon charged towards him in a frenzy once again. As the cycle repeated, a large amount of wings of the moon's blood was absorbed by Baitu's day. His body swelled up rapidly, and a thick chi erupted from within his body. Under the influence of this chi, not only did the wings of the moon above Black Mountain Tribe charge towards him in a frenzy, even the wings of the moon that were heading towards Dark Mountain Tribe and Dark Dragon Tribe sensed it. They split up and changed their direction, charging towards Black Mountain Tribe. Not too far away from Black Mountain Tribe was a person shrouded in a black robe. His existence did not fit in with the tribe members of Black Mountain Tribe who were prostrating themselves on the ground. His black robe was definitely not something that a small tribe in the area could possess. At that moment, he stood there and looked at Black Mountain Tribe's elder in the sky. A ghastly smile appeared on his lips. I taught you the method to find the moonstones and summon the wings of the moon. I also told you how to reach the Transcendence realm in the shortest time possible. Whether you can succeed or not will depend on your luck. Compared to the devastation outside, Su Ming was relatively safe. He pushed away the stone covering his body and jumped out of the cave. Many parts of his skin were blistered from the heat. His lips were chapped, and his heart pounded against his chest. This is the resting place of the wings of the moon. Su Ming stared at the deeper parts of the cave. He had heard many legends about the wings of the moon since he was young. He knew how terrifying these strange creatures were. The rumor that they could not die made Su Ming narrow his eyes. After a moment of silence, he crawled out of the cave slowly. When he was near the exit, he peeked his head out and took a quick look. The moment he saw it, he immediately took a deep breath. The sky outside was filled with red mist. Roars echoed in the air. There were countless wings of the moon. Su Ming quickly retracted his body and slowly moved back in hesitation. He returned to the cave once again and began to hesitate. I wonder how the tribe is. I can't go out now. Once I go out, I'll be noticed by the wings of the moon. Su Ming frowned. He was worried about the tribe, but he knew that he could not solve the problem. His eyes flashed, and he stared into the deeper parts of the cave. Light slowly appeared in his eyes. The number of wings of the moon this time is much more than usual. By the looks of it, the deeper parts of the cave should be empty. Su Ming hesitated for a moment before he slowly moved forward. He went past the place where he was quenching herbs and looked into the deeper parts of the cave. Determination appeared in his eyes. I might as well go and see what's in there. Why would the wings of the moon stay here all year round? Perhaps I can find their secret. If I go back and tell the elder, it might be of help to him. Su Ming rushed towards the deeper parts of the cave that he had never explored before. It was strange. In the past, the cave was always burning hot. There were even waves of unbearable heat coming from the cave. Yet now, as Su Ming went deeper, he could not feel any heat. Instead, there was a cold feeling coming from the deeper parts of the cave. As Su Ming walked deeper into the cave, the three tribes at the foot of Dark Mountain were in a commotion again. More than 100 beasts with the wings of the moon from Dark Mountain tribe had already charged through the sea of fire and pounced on the people from Dark Mountain tribe. The berserkers in the tribe fought with all their might. A cold glare flashed in Bei Ling's eyes. He protected Chen Xin, who was behind him. Freezing air spread out from his right hand and turned into sharp ice crystals. There were many wounds on his body, and blood flowed out from them. Suddenly, he focused his gaze and looked into the distance. Without any hesitation, he grabbed the bow behind his back with his right hand. At that moment, at the instant Bei Ling held the bow in his hands, a grim, shocking presence instantly rose from his body. He drew the bowstring with his left hand and drew it swiftly. The tip of the arrow shone, and immediately, the ice in the area swiftly gathered towards him. Then, he shot the arrow in the direction he was looking at. In the distance, Lei Chun was filled with bloodlust. There were a few wings of the moon on his body, but he did not care. Instead, he grabbed one of the wings of the moon on his body and bit it. "How dare you suck my blood? I'll suck your blood too." Yet the moment he bit down on the wings of the moon, he immediately noticed dozens of wings of the moon charging towards him from the sky. With his current level of cultivation, there was no way he could fight against so many wings of the moon. At that critical moment, a cold gust of air suddenly charged towards him. Along with the cold gust of air was an arrow surrounded by ice shards. It exploded above Lei Chun with a bang, causing the dozens of wings of the moon to fall back and save Lei Chun. Lei Chun was stunned. He turned around and looked at Bei Ling, who was coldly putting away his bow. A complicated look flashed through his eyes. The chi in the tribe leader of Dark Mountain tribe was boiling. He held a long silver spear in his hand and threw it. Every time he threw it, there would be a loud bang and countless waves of air would tumble backwards, forcing the wings of the moon to scatter. Yet even so, there were just too many wings of the moon charging towards them. Some of the normal tribesmen even let out shrill cries of pain as they were lifted into the air by the wings of the moon. At that moment, the elder made his move. He swung the bone staff in his hand, and immediately, the entire tribe seemed to tremble. A gigantic statue of the god of berserkers appeared out of thin air. Cruelty appeared in the statue's eyes, and once it appeared, it looked as if it had come to life. The long dragon it held in its hand even let out a roar towards the sky before it manifested and swept through the area. As time passed by, the night of the blood moon slowly passed by. Yet the battle within the tribe became even more intense. In the end, the wings of the moon no longer sucked blood, but captured the berserkers who were still alive. It was as if they wanted to bring them back to their nest as food. When the sky in the distance gradually brightened, a piercing howl came from within Dark Dragon tribe. Among the many wings of the moon, there was a figure in white. Her beautiful face was pale and filled with despair. She was captured by the wings of the moon along with a few other tribesmen as they charged towards Dark Mountain. Behind them, there was an old woman dressed in coarse clothes. Her face was filled with anxiety as she chased after them. Yet she did not have to give chase for long. Screams of pain came from within Dark Dragon Tribe. The old woman's eyes were bloodshot and filled with grief. She turned around and gave up on the chase, choosing to protect her tribe instead. Tears fell from the eyes of the white-robed figure in the distance when she saw this scene, but the tears fell down from the sky, disappearing without a trace. No one could see them either. When the sky gradually brightened and the blood-red moon gradually disappeared, a large number of wings of the moon whizzed through the air and charged towards Dark Mountain from all directions. There was a group of wings of the moon that grabbed the woman in white and a few other members of the various tribes and charged towards Black Flame Mountain. They entered the mountain through the various entrances. Chapter 29. Su Ming moved forward cautiously within the molten fire cave. He moved slowly towards the deeper parts of the cave. He was very cautious along the way. Only when he saw the path ahead of him would he move. As he moved, he held the horn in his hand. His eyes sparkled as he circulated the chi in his body so that he could release the power of his 11 blood veins at any time. Every time he moved forward, Su Ming would instinctively search for a place to hide his body so that he could hide if he ran into danger. Or if the wings of the moon suddenly returned, he would have a place to hide. Su Ming might be curious about the unknown, but his cautiousness had mostly suppressed his curiosity, especially since there was danger in this place, which made him even more cautious. As he continued moving forward, the coldness of the cave became clearer. There were very few forks in the cave, so Su Ming's speed gradually increased. It was dark all around him. There were many cracks of different sizes on the walls. By the looks of it, they should have cracked due to the constant heat. However, Su Ming also noticed that some of the cracks had clearly just appeared because the color of the walls within them was slightly different. That's strange. These cracks must have just appeared. Just what kind of power could cause new cracks to appear on the walls? Su Ming's eyes flashed. A guess formed in his mind. Could it be that when the extreme heat cools down, an unimaginable power will erupt? Su Ming scratched his head. He did not think too much about it. Instead, he memorized the phenomenon in his heart. He did not know how long he had walked. It felt like time was passing by slowly. Suddenly, Su Ming stopped. The cave before him had clearly expanded. The deeper he went, the wider the cave became. Could it be that I've reached the deeper parts? Su Ming looked around carefully and walked forward slowly. Before long, the cave before him became bigger. Eventually, Su Ming took a deep breath and looked at everything before him. He fell into deep thought. Before him was a cave the size of his tribe. There were many small caves around him. They were densely packed together. With one glance, he saw that there were about a dozen of them. The cave he walked out of was one of them. In silence, Su Ming moved forward. His eyes sparkled, and he cast a few more glances at each of the small holes. Eventually, a focused glint appeared in his eyes, and he jumped up. He stopped for a moment before all the small holes and sniffed them. Once he walked past all the small holes, Su Ming stared at one of them and went in without any hesitation. This was the only hole where he could smell the faint stench of blood. Obviously, this cave was where the wings of the moon flew out from. As he charged forward, Su Ming would occasionally stop. With a pensive look in his eyes, he would use the horn to cut down a big stone from the wall around him. The size of the stone was similar to the tunnel. Even if it was rather troublesome to cut them down, Su Ming still persisted. As he moved forward, he cut down a few more of these stones. Every time he cut it off, he would place it aside according to the angle. Gradually, Su Ming's speed became faster as he remained cautious. He could sense that he was heading towards the foot of the mountain, which was why the area he covered was becoming larger. Su Ming continued running deeper into the cave until he felt that he had traveled a long distance. Gradually, he saw a flash of red light before him. The red light was like fire. When he looked at it, he could not even tell what it was. The moment he saw the red light, Su Ming slowed down. His heart pounded against his chest. He had a feeling that this was the end of the tunnel. Yet as he got closer, he felt as if his blood was about to boil. He was not unfamiliar with this feeling. There were numerous scratches on the sturdy stone walls around him. There were even some marks that looked like teeth had been bitten on the walls. It gave off a strange atmosphere and made Su-ming nervous, but he did not stop. Instead, he gradually walked towards the place where the fiery red light came from. This was indeed the end of the tunnel. There was no other path ahead. There was only an even bigger cave. Su-ming's face was alert as he stood there and looked down. The moment he looked down, he felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He stood there dumbfounded. He instinctively took a few steps back and sucked in a cold breath. It was a giant basin. There were numerous spikes in the shape of mountains protruding out of the basin like sharp spikes. The spikes were gray in color, but there was a freezing air coming from them. It enveloped the entire area, causing the cave to be extremely cold. If that was all, Su-ming would not have been so shocked. Besides the large amount of freezing spikes, there was something else in the basin. It was a tribe. There were a lot of houses made of stone, fences and watchtowers made of stones. Su-ming even saw pots made of stones in many places in the tribe. There was a totem outside each house. The totem looked like a burning ball of fire. The houses made of stone were huge and built neatly. At first glance, they looked even more luxurious than the houses in Dark Mountain Tribe where Su-ming was. Su-ming also saw paths made of stone within the tribe. There were many protruding stones on the paths. Su-ming looked at them for a long time, but he still could not tell what they were for. This was not a normal tribe, and it was definitely not a complete tribe. Su-ming's gaze fell on a few houses at the edge of the tribe. The houses seemed to have been split into two by someone using a strange power. Only half of the houses were left in the basin. The other half was nowhere to be seen. It was especially so for the land where the tribe was located. Besides the paths made of stones, the rest of the land looked like mud. It was clearly different from the rocks in the mountain. Su-ming's breathing quickened. As he looked at everything before him, he could not help but recall the legend of the fire berserker tribe that he had heard from the elder. Gradually, a picture appeared in his head. In that picture, there was a gigantic tribe on the ground. It occupied a vast area, and the end of the tribe could not be seen. All the houses in the tribe were made of stone, and there was a totem of fire on them. That totem represented the name of the tribe. However, one day a drastic change occurred to the tribe. It was split into many parts by some unknown force, and they began to collapse. Furthermore, some strange power caused the tribe and its people, as well as the land they were on, to vanish, as if they were being teleported away. A small part of the tribe and the land were moved into Dark Mountain. That's not a legend. Su-ming mumbled as he looked at the inconceivable sight before him that made him unable to believe it. He swept his gaze across the tribe, and his pupils shrank when he saw the center of the tribe. Over there was an even stranger object. It was a big tree, or rather, it looked like a big tree. Its entire body was red, and it emitted a fiery light. The fiery light Su-ming saw in the tunnel came from this tree. The tree was so thick that it would take a dozen people to wrap their arms around it. Its roots pierced through the ground and seemed to have pierced through Black Flame Mountain. It went deep into the ground, and Su-ming did not know how far the roots extended. The tree only had a trunk. The top of the tree pierced through the rocks in the cave. It was as if what was revealed was only a part of the trunk. A tree that grows within Black Flame Mountain. Su-ming's eyes were fixed on the tree trunk. There were some familiar little red flowers blooming with a strange, enchanting beauty. As he looked at the red flowers, Su-ming remembered the strange muddy swamp in the forest in silence. Su-ming averted his gaze and looked at the ruins of the tribe that had been buried in the passage of time. His heart was suddenly filled with sorrow. He sighed and jumped down to stand in the tribe. He stood in the Fire Berserker tribe, one of the 8 great tribes of the Berserker tribe that dared to fight against the god of berserkers. If that's the case, then the Wings of the Moon should be like what the legends say. They were formed by the Fire Berserker tribe members who could not die under the Elder's Berserker art. But this is too unbelievable. How could there be such an art? Just how strong was the Elder of the Fire Berserker tribe? The scroll said that after the blood solidification realm is the transcendence realm, and after the transcendence realm is the bone sacrifice realm. As for the realms after the bone sacrifice realm, There was no further description. They only used the title of Berserker Master. Su Ming looked at the ancient tribe before him and walked into it quietly. The tribe was empty. Besides the houses and some miscellaneous items, Su Ming could not see any corpses. The silence around him caused the place to be filled with a suffocating atmosphere. As he was thinking about it, he stepped on the small path filled with protruding stones. When he stepped on it, Su Ming felt a slight chill on his feet. He lowered his head and looked at it. He could not figure out what this place was used for. He walked forward slowly, but as he moved forward, he suddenly stopped. He seemed to have noticed something from the corner of his eyes. He lifted his head and looked at the wall not too far away. There was a skeleton leaning against the wall at the edge of the divided tribe. The skeleton was blocked by some houses, causing Su Ming to be unable to see it previously. Yet now, he could see it clearly from where he stood. The moment he saw the skeleton, Su Ming's pupils shrank. This was the only skeleton he had seen so far. He took a few quick steps forward and arrived beside the skeleton. Once he took a closer look, Su Ming's body trembled. The skeleton was very strange. The upper half of his body looked like a human's, but it had shrunk as if it had withered. The bones in the lower half of his body were even stranger. It was as if they had melted and changed. They were very different from those of a normal person. There were even two wings made of bones that looked like they were about to grow out of his back. Judging by the looks of the bones, they were somewhat similar to the wings of the moon. It was as if this person was going through a change in his bones before he died. He was going through the pain of turning from a human into a wings of the moon. However, there was no sign of pain on the skeleton's face. Instead, there was a hint of mockery and pride. But who was the mockery directed at? The skeleton's right index finger touched the wall beside him and pierced deep into it. Su Ming lifted his head and looked at the direction of his finger. There was a clear line of words on the wall. Those were the words of the Berserker tribe. The moment Su Ming's gaze fell on the words on the stone wall, the sound of flapping wings suddenly came from within the tunnel leading to the entrance. There was also a terrifying roar mixed within, along with a few faint cries of despair. The wings of the moon had returned. Su Ming's expression immediately changed. Chapter 30. The sound of flapping wings traveled through the air, causing the quiet ruins of the tribe to feel as if the wind and clouds were stirring. Su Ming's eyes sparkled, but he did not move. The sound of flapping wings and the piercing screeches echoed in his ears, but Su Ming knew the length of the tunnel. Even if the sound came first, there was still some time before the wings of the moon would return. There might not be much time left, but it was the last moment he had left. Without any hesitation, Su Ming focused his attention on the line of words on the wall where the strange skeleton was leaning against. "Why do you weep, O heavens?" That was the first line of the words. The words were written in a flamboyant style and exuded an arrogant and domineering air. Su Ming's pupil shrank when he saw it. Su Ming did not quite understand the meaning of the words, but he could not make sense of it. However, the sadness and arrogance in the words left a deep impression on Su Ming. "Why do you weep, O heavens?" Su Ming mumbled and looked at the remaining words of the Berserker tribe. "My lust for berserkers stretches to all corners of the world. My fire fuses with my blood. My thoughts burn the heavens, and my thoughts burn the heavens. If the moon of fire rises from the clouds, it will shine between the heavens and the earth. At that time, I will meditate and burn my blood. 9 is the limit, 1 is the law. Burn the Berserker fire and worship the 9 times, and you will understand the art of worshiping fire. Why do you weep, O heavens?" The words at the bottom were clearly carved by the same person. However, they were not words of lament. Instead, they were rather complicated words. "Worship the Berserker fire and worship the 9 times, and you will understand the art of worshiping fire." Su Ming frowned. The words were complicated and difficult to understand. Su Ming read it again, but he still could not understand it. In his silence, the screeches and the flapping of wings coming from the entrance, not too far away, became louder. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes, and he did not linger around. Instead, with one move, he leaped up agilely and charged towards the entrance. In the blink of an eye, he arrived at the entrance of the tunnel. As he stood there, the piercing screeches became clearer. Su Ming turned around and looked at the desolate tribe before he turned around and ran into the tunnel. As he ran, he paid attention to the intensity of the screeches. Once he was hundreds of feet away, Su Ming stopped and crawled into a crack on the wall. The crack was not big, but Su Ming was frail to begin with. Once he crawled in, he immediately crouched down. Even his breathing became weak. With the stone wall as cover, his heart pounded against his chest. He looked outside through the crack and waited quietly. Time passed by. 10 breaths later, all the pores on Su Ming's body stood up. He could clearly see a thick red fog charging out of the tunnel as if it had erupted. Piercing roars rang out from within the fog, and red shadows also charged out of it. Those red shadows were wings of the moon. Su Ming's heart raced as he observed the wings of the moon at such a close distance. Yet he did not move. Not even a hint of light shone from his narrowed eyes. There were too many wings of the moon. As they charged through the tunnel, one of them even crashed into the edge of the crack. It was less than 5 feet away from where Su Ming crouched down. Su Ming's right hand held onto the horn tightly. His palm had turned white from using too much strength. At that moment, he could not even feel his own heartbeat. His entire being seemed to have calmed down in the midst of the extreme change. He stared at the wings of the moon that accidentally crashed into the tunnel. He looked at their hideous faces as they flapped their wings and flew out of the crack. Yet Su Ming's wariness did not lessen. Instead, it increased. At that moment, cries of despair traveled through the air. Su Ming's gaze followed the crack and saw a few people being held by a large number of wings of the moon in the fog as they charged towards the tribe at the end of the tunnel. There were 9 of them. Su Ming could not see the faces of these 9 people, but at the instant he looked over, he saw a white-robed figure. He saw a beautiful face filled with despair and emptiness. "It's her!" Su Ming's pupils shrank. With just one glance, he recognized the person in white. It was Dark Dragon Tribes by Ling, whom he and Lei Chun had met in the square. Su Ming was silent. Time passed by slowly. Before long, the cries from the tunnel faded away. Even the fog had mostly dissipated. It was as if all the wings of the moon had returned to their nests. As the blood-red moon in the sky disappeared, it was as if they were about to go back to sleep. A wave of heat spread out rapidly and replaced the cold chill. In fact, even the cracked walls were rapidly heating up. At that moment, cracking sounds reverberated in the air, and Su Ming saw with his own eyes that a few more fine cracks had appeared on the mountain rock beside him. So this is how the cracks were formed. Su Ming's eyes narrowed. He quickly stood up and walked out of the crack. As he stood in the tunnel, the fog around him became thinner. Waves of heat came from the tribe at the end of the tunnel and blew on Su Ming's body, causing him to sweat profusely. The stones on the ground were also rapidly heating up. When he stepped on them, he could even feel his feet burning. Su Ming knew clearly that before long, the high temperature and heat in this place would definitely not be a place where he could survive. To leave or not to leave? A hint of hesitation appeared on Su Ming's face. Cries of pain traveled through the air. Those who heard them would be shaken to the core. "It's fine. I lied to her in the square with Lei Chun. We met again today. If I leave now, I won't be able to bear it." Su Ming was still a child. He had a simple heart. He took a deep breath of the heat and ran towards the end of the tunnel. "If I can save her, then I will. If I can't, then I will have no regrets." Su Ming's eyes were filled with determination. He held onto the horn. The closer he got to the end of the tunnel, the stronger the heat became. Fortunately, the distance was not too far. Before long, Su Ming reached the end of the tunnel. He ignored the heat on the walls of the tunnel and stuck his body close to it. He peeked inside. With this glance, a faint light flickered in his eyes. Su Ming saw a large number of sharp spikes protruding out of the tribe at the bottom of the basin. There were 7 people struggling on those spikes, but they were still alive. The 7 people's bodies were pierced through by 7 sharp spikes. Blood flowed down the spikes. They were not dead yet. They were screaming in pain as they felt their life slowly slipping away. These 7 people, without exception, were all men. Su-Ming looked at them and let out a sigh of relief. He did not know these 7 people. It was clear that they were not from Dark Mountain Tribe. The other spikes around them were melting at a speed visible to the naked eye. As they melted, a large amount of dark red magma covered the ground of the tribe like a river. When he saw this, Su-Ming took a deep breath. He finally understood what those spikes were. This place is strange. Perhaps the awakening and departure of the wings of the moon has something to do with these spikes. Su-Ming could tell that these spikes would turn back into magma every once in a while for some unknown reason. However, this transformation would not last for too long. After a night, when the wings of the moon returned, the spikes would melt and turn back into magma. Judging by the number of these spikes, once they melt, they'll fill up the basin, causing the tribe to be hidden once again in the magma. Su-Ming lifted his head swiftly and looked at the center of the tribe. He saw a small red trunk that looked like a big tree poking out of the ground. The tree trunk was showing signs of melting under the heat of the basin. It wriggled strangely. If he looked closely, he could see that there were lines circling around the tree trunk. Occasionally, a corner of the tree would be revealed. It was the wings of the moon. However, the heads of the wings of the moon that had entered the tree trunk were no longer ferocious. Instead, their faces were filled with pain, desolation, and sorrow. They did not continue howling, but their expressions were as if they were crying silently. Some of the wings of the moon even made strange movements. In the midst of their pain and sorrow, they repeatedly bit their claws and smeared the blood on their eyes. However, not a single drop of blood could be seen on their bitten fingers. Those wings of the moon crawled into the tree trunk. What are they doing? Su-Ming stared at the tree trunk. In his silence, he could feel the heat becoming stronger. He could not stay any longer. I can't find her. Oh well. Su-Ming shook his head. He had already tried his best. He was about to leave the place, but just as he was about to move, he suddenly stopped. His gaze fell on the red tree trunk at the center of the basin. 2 faces appeared on the tree. He did not know one of them, but the other was Bai Ling. Bai Ling's eyes were wide open. There was no sign of life in her eyes. It was as if she had given up all hope for survival. There was a poignant beauty in her eyes. Su-Ming looked at her face, and then at the magma that was slowly gathering beneath him. The magma had already formed a thick layer as the thorns melted. It rose to about half the height of the houses in the tribe. He could only see the roofs of the stone houses within the basin. However, the roofs were also gradually turning red. The wings of the moon venturing out is related to the blood moon. But by the looks of it, it should also be related to the heat here. They seem to be afraid of heat. That's why they only flew out to look for food when the temperature dropped. Once they came back, they all crawled into the tree trunk. Not a single one of them was outside. This is consistent with my judgment. Su-Ming did not act rashly. He stood there, his eyes sparkling. I should be able to save them, but I'll have to wait a little longer. Su-Ming stared at the tree trunk and occasionally looked at the height of the magma in the basin. After a while, the heat in the area increased once again. Su-Ming was sweating profusely. His skin also showed signs of cracking. His eyes flashed, and the qi in his body started boiling. The power of the 11 blood veins surged through his entire body, and he took a step forward. He was so fast that in the blink of an eye, he landed on the roof of one of the houses in the basin. The moment his feet landed, a sizzling sound could be heard. White mist immediately appeared under his feet. Su-Ming did not stop. He leapt up again and landed on the roof of another house. After a few leaps, he was already close to the strange red tree trunk. The moment he closed in, Su-Ming suddenly saw a woman he did not know standing beside Bai Ling's face, let out a shrill scream of pain. Her face started rapidly withering away, and in the blink of an eye, she turned into a terrifying pile of bones. It was as if her body had fused with the tree trunk, and her flesh and life were absorbed by some strange power. Chapter 31. This sudden scene caused Su Ming's heart to tremble, but not only did he not stop, he even increased his speed. That was how Su Ming was. Either he did not do anything, or once he made up his mind, it would be very difficult for him to change his mind. Almost the moment he arrived, Bai Ling's empty eyes seemed to have regained focus. She looked at Su Ming with a dumbfounded expression, and tears fell from her eyes. In an instant, Su Ming closed in. Without a hint of hesitation, he held the horn in his right hand and stabbed it into the red tree trunk. Half of the horn went in, and a dark red liquid that looked like blood immediately flowed out from the wound on the tree trunk. At that moment, a muffled roar came from within the tree trunk. That roar was filled with anger, and it made the entire basin tremble. Su Ming's face was pale, but there was a chilling glint in his eyes. Once the horn pierced through the tree trunk, he slashed downwards. With a loud, tearing sound, a giant crack appeared on the tree trunk, and a chilling air seeped out from the crack. The crack appeared by Bai Ling's side. Once it split open, Su Ming saw Bai Ling's body within. He did not hesitate. He reached into the tree trunk and grabbed Bai Ling's arm that was hidden within the tree trunk. With a low growl, he yanked her arm outwards. The moment he yanked, Bai Ling was pulled out of the tree trunk. Bai Ling was completely stunned. She stared at Su Ming dumbly and let him pull her out. More tears fell from her eyes. At that moment, Su Ming's face was etched deeply into her mind. Su Ming immediately leapt backwards as he dragged Bai Ling along. His heart pounded against his chest. He was just about to leave when the roars became louder and filled the entire basin. Then, wings of the moon appeared from the crack on the tree trunk. The sorrow and desolation on their faces were gone and replaced by madness and bloodlust. They rushed out. Su Ming felt his skin crawl. He quickly retreated. There were simply too many wings of the moon before him. They were so densely packed together that there were at least thousands of them. There were even more wings of the moon within the tree branches. Yet the moment the wings of the moon charged out, Su Ming immediately saw terror appear on the wings of the moon's faces the moment they were swept by the wave of heat. Some of them even fell from midair as if their bodies had stiffened and fell into the magma. With a bang, they shattered like stones. There was no blood or flesh, only a wave of cold air that rose into the air. Legend has it that the fire barbarian tribe possessed an immortal body, but they were turned into wings of the moon by the god of barbarians. This is true. They were originally not afraid of fire, but after becoming wings of the moon, there was a strange change. They were actually afraid of fire. Judging by the way they died, their bodies are like ice. A sharp glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. As he retreated, he grabbed Bai Ling with his left hand and threw her towards the exit of the tunnel not too far away. "What are you daydreaming about?" "Run!" Su Ming growled, and it made Bai Ling's heart tremble, as if she had just woken up from a nightmare. Her body landed beside the exit of the tunnel, and she turned around to cast a glance at Su Ming. "Run!" Su Ming jumped up and ran towards the exit. By then, the magma in the basin had already covered some of the stone houses. There were only a few roofs left. Bai Ling's face was pale. She no longer hesitated. She turned around and ran towards the exit. Her feet were in pain, but she ignored it. The only thought in her mind was to run away. Su Ming jumped from the roofs and ran towards the exit. Behind him, a large number of wings of the moon were howling, but they did not dare chase after him. However, the muffled howls coming from the tree trunks made the wings of the moon even more agitated. A dozen of them rushed towards Su Ming without a care for anything else. The chi in Su Ming's body was boiling. The 11 blood veins spread through his veins. As the dozen wings of the moon closed in on him, he swung the horn in his hand and rushed towards the exit. All of this might have seemed to have happened over a long period of time, but the moment Su Ming returned to the exit, some of the dozen wings of the moon fell into the magma and exploded. Su Ming's heart raced against his chest, but his mind remained calm. Everything was going according to his plan. If he had not held back a little longer, just now, and only attacked when the heat was even hotter, things would not have gone so smoothly. Even more wings of the moon would have appeared. Su Ming stepped into the tunnel. The smell of burnt flesh wafted out from his feet, but he did not stop. He continued running forward. Behind him, the entire basin was filled with the howls of the wings of the moon, but they did not dare chase after him. Still, there were a few of them who rushed into the tunnel, even though many of their companions had died. They screamed at Su Ming. The wings of the moon are afraid of heat. That's why they stayed within the tree trunk and did not go out. The further out I go, the weaker the heat becomes. As Su Ming ran, the piercing howls behind him became clearer. I have to kill the wings of the moon that are chasing after me. I can't be late. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He saw a big stone that he had cut off earlier in the tunnel. He immediately ran towards the stone and turned around with the horn in his hand. He saw 4 wings of the moon charging towards him as whistling sounds came from behind him. Su Ming's face was pale, but his eyes were calm. Just as the 4 wings of the moon were about to close in on him, Su Ming kicked the big stone beside him. He had measured the size of the boulder when he was preparing, and it was similar to the size of the passageway. At this moment, as he kicked with all his chi and blood, the boulder flew up with a boom, and like a door, it blocked the passageway. Su Ming's timing was perfect. He wanted to use the stone door to temporarily block 3 wings of the moon and leave one behind, so he could use the horn to kill it in the hot tunnel. But the wings of the moon were too fast. The stone Su Ming made only blocked 2 of them. There were still 2 more coming towards him. Su Ming frowned. He immediately turned around and ran. Even if he could kill 2 wings of the moon, he would be injured. He had a better plan. As he ran, the 2 wings of the moon behind him became faster and faster. Just as they were less than 100 feet away, another similar-sized stone appeared before Su Ming. The moment he passed by the stone, Su Ming used his previous experience and kicked it. With a bang, the stone flew up and blocked the tunnel. Only one of the wings of the moon flew out. The other was temporarily blocked behind the stone. Just as one of the wings of the moon was blocked and the other charged towards Su Ming, a cold glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. With the horn in his hand, he did not retreat. Instead, he charged towards the wings of the moon. The man and the beast immediately started fighting in the tunnel. If it was Su Ming who did not practice the ways of the Berserker way, he would not be able to fight back. But now that he had 11 blood veins and the sharp horn in his hand, he had the upper hand in the fight against the wings of the moon. With a whoosh, Su Ming's horn pierced the wings of the moon's body and cut open its body. But the wound quickly healed. The wings of the moon only looked dispirited, but did not look like they were about to die. Su Ming's eyes flashed. He cut open a few more wounds so that the wings of the moon would not be able to heal within a short period of time. Then he turned around and left quickly. As he sped along the way, whenever he encountered the boulders he had set up, he would kick them away, causing them to become obstacles in the passage. Even though he stopped for a while, Su Ming's forte was speed. He was so fast that he only needed to flash through the tunnel. Very soon, he arrived at the cave filled with many small holes. I'm here. The moment he arrived, Su Ming heard Bai Ling's weak voice. He saw Bai Ling, who was pale and terrified, hiding in one of the small holes. Her body was trembling. Bai Ling had arrived a long time ago, but she did not know which was the exit. She did not dare move around recklessly, afraid that she would run into the wings of the moon again. At that moment, Bai Ling was no longer the arrogant and quick-witted girl Su Ming had seen in the square. She looked like a frightened little beast. The uncertainty in her eyes made Su Ming smile when he saw it. You're still laughing. Bai Ling was very nervous. She was about to speak when Su Ming appeared in a flash. He grabbed her arm and ran towards one of the many small holes not far away. This is the exit? Bai Ling asked softly. She did not know why, but her fear seemed to have lessened when she saw Su Ming. Su Ming nodded. He did not speak. He held Bai Ling's hand and ran quickly through the tunnel. He could hear Bai Ling's panting. The sound was very pleasant. It made Su Ming's heart race. He did not know if it was because of the running or because of the softness in his hand. Bai Ling did not speak along the way. She simply allowed Su Ming to hold her hand as they ran forward in the tunnel filled with danger. Her heart raced against her chest, and the same thoughts as Su Ming's rose in her mind. Those thoughts washed away her fear and despair from before. However, the silence did not last long. Soon, Su Ming brought Bai Ling to his cave for quenching herbs. Once there, Su Ming let go of her hand. With a serious look on his face, he used his horn to scratch at the small holes on the ground. Occasionally, he would frown as if he was calculating something. There was also a fire burning under the barren cauldron not far away. Bai Ling stared at Su Ming's actions. Her mind was in a mess. She still felt like she was dreaming. She had already lost all hope when she was captured by the wings of the moon. Yet the things that happened made her feel like she was still in a dream. She was not fully awake yet. At that moment, a piercing screech came from the deeper parts of the cave. It was getting stronger as if it was getting closer. Bai Ling shuddered and instinctively moved closer to Su Ming. Yet she only took a few steps before Su Ming lifted his head and grabbed her. They quickly walked past the small holes on the ground and turned back to look at the deeper parts of the cave. Before long, the piercing screech became louder. 3 wings of the moon charged towards the 2 of them ferociously. Bai Ling trembled. She was about to retreat when Su Ming's eyes flashed. With the horn in his hand, he tore a crack on the ground beyond the burning flames under the barren cauldron and connected it with another ravine. Suddenly, a curtain of fire appeared and turned into a sea of fire. The 3 wings of the moon that were charging towards them were instantly engulfed by the sea of fire. Shrill screeches could be heard. The 3 wings of the moon fell to the ground and exploded. A cold air spread out and fused with the fire. Under the illumination of the fire, Su Ming's face darkened. Bai Ling stood behind him. The fear in her eyes grew stronger. They are afraid of fire? After a long while, Bai Ling spoke softly. They worshipped fire when they were alive. Fire was their glory. But after they turned into wings of the moon, they not only lost their minds and bodies, they also lost their glory. Once they lost their glory, they were not afraid of fire. They were ashamed of it. They were born in fire, and they died in fire. Su Ming mumbled. He could not help but remember the words he saw on the skeleton in the Fire Berserker tribe. Heavens, why do you weep? Chapter 32. Su Ming closed his eyes. He felt that everything he saw that night had turned into a heavy feeling in his heart. That feeling was filled with desolation and sorrow. Just who was that skeleton in the Fire Berserker tribe? Why was he the only one who could end his life when he turned into a wings of the moon? Perhaps he's a powerful berserker from the Fire Berserker tribe. The strange skeleton appeared before Su Ming's eyes, and he sighed softly. In his mind, there was also a paragraph of complicated words that he could not forget. My Tao of Berserker lust stretches to all corners of the world. My fire fuses with my blood. My thoughts burn the heavens, and my thoughts burn the heavens. If the moon of fire rises from the clouds, it will shine between the heavens and the earth. When I think about it, my blood will burn. 9 is the limit. 1 is the law. Light the Berserker fire and worship the 9 times. Only then will you be able to worship fire. Su Ming could not understand the meaning behind those words. He looked around and saw Bai Ling beside him. She was looking around curiously. It was clear that she did not know what this place was for. Let's go, Miss Bai Ling, Su Ming smiled. He leapt up and crawled out of the exit. Bai Ling quickly followed behind him. She had wanted to leave this place since a long time ago. Every single second she spent in this place made her feel uncomfortable. The moment they walked out of the exit, the mountain wind howled and blew against their bodies. It was as if they were about to be blown away by the wind. Bai Ling's face was pale. She grabbed onto a rock beside her. However, she had been spoiled since she was young in the tribe. She had never climbed this kind of mountain before. Even if she gritted her teeth and persevered, her increasingly pale face revealed her fear. Su Ming sized up Bai Ling. The girl's beauty was something he had never seen before, especially her pale face. At that moment, there was a hint of a pitiful look on her face. It's fine. I'll carry you. Su Ming scratched his head, but his heart was racing against his chest. You? Bai Ling hesitated for a moment. She looked at the bottom of the mountain that looked like a bottomless abyss and nodded her head. Su Ming's spirits lifted. He went forward and squatted down. A hint of red appeared on Bai Ling's pale face. Without a word, she laid on Su Ming's back and instinctively wrapped her arms around his neck. Su Ming blinked. He could clearly feel the softness behind him and the delicate fragrance that crawled into his nose. He took a deep breath, and an indescribable feeling rose in his heart. That you have to hold on tight. Otherwise, don't blame me if you fall. Su Ming said instinctively, but he did not hear any sound coming from behind him. After a moment of hesitation, he calmed himself down and quickly climbed down the mountain. With his nimbleness and familiarity with the mountain, even if he had to carry a person on his back, it would not affect him too much. However, for some unknown reason, Su Ming's path today was all steep. Occasionally, he would jump down, and when the people behind him let out cries of surprise, he would immediately grab onto some rocks or vines. Su Ming's face lit up with pride as he felt the petite body hugging him tighter. It should not have taken him too long to climb down Black Flame Mountain, but Su Ming used a whole 2 hours to slowly climb down. When Bai Ling came down from Su Ming's back with a red face and a terrified expression on her face, Su Ming felt a little regretful. He rolled his eyes, let out a few dry coughs, and looked at Bai Ling. This is a forest. The snow here is deep, and there are a lot of traps. It's also quite a distance from Dark Dragon Tribe. You might be in danger if you're alone. How about this? I'll send you back to Dark Dragon Tribe first, then we'll go home. Su Ming spoke slowly as he observed Bai Ling's expression. When he saw her hesitation, he felt happy and quickly spoke again. Su Ming frowned. Once he looked at the sky, he said, "But this road isn't easy to walk on. Why don't I force myself to continue carrying you on my back? I can save time this way, and I can also go home faster." Then, Bai Ling bit her lower lip as her face turned red once again. Just now, when they were climbing down from the mountain peak, she could tell that the person in front of her was doing this on purpose. If he continued to do this, Bai Ling's eyes were filled with a trace of shame and anger. "Huh? I'm your savior." Su Ming glared at her. He could see the anger in Bai Ling's eyes. He felt a little guilty, but when he remembered that he saved her, he became confident. "You're not happy? Fine. You're a berserker anyway. There may be a lot of wild beasts here, and there are also a lot of traps. There might even be wings of the moon. But if you're careful, it should be fine. All right, I'm leaving." Su Ming yawned and turned around to walk back to the tribe. But before he could even take a few steps, a frail and anxious voice came from behind him. Then thank you. I don't know the way. Please send me back to the tribe." Su Ming was immediately happy, but his expression remained the same. He frowned, as if he was unwilling to do so. He looked at Bai Ling, then crouched down and spoke impatiently. "Come on, let's see if we can make it back before dark. If we can't, then we'll have to find another place to spend the night." Bai Ling widened her eyes and looked at Su Ming. She had some understanding of the person before her. When she remembered what happened at the square, she did not know what to say. More importantly, the person before her had walked out when she was at her most desperate. His expression and decisiveness in the cave was something she could not forget. Bai Ling walked to Su Ming's side with a blush on her face. She lowered her head and lay on his frail back once again. She could hear her heart pounding against her chest, but she could not tell what kind of emotion it was. Su Ming carried Bai Ling on his back and ran like a monkey through the forest. He liked the fragrance that came from behind him. As he ran, he changed his direction and started walking in circles. After a long while, Bai Ling, who had been silent all this while, had a strange look in her eyes. She tightened her grip on Su Ming's neck. "We've walked through this place 3 times. She spoke softly as she looked at a withered tree not far away. "Huh? Is that so? Am I lost? Let me take a good look." Su Ming stopped in his tracks and looked surprised. He looked at his surroundings carefully and nodded his head solemnly. "That's right. I've never walked this path before." He did not show any signs of awkwardness. He changed his direction and continued running. Time trickled by. Su Ming was only halfway to Dark Dragon Tribe when dusk arrived. However, he brought Bai Ling along the way to Dark Mountain Tribe. He cast a glance at the tribe from afar. When he saw that there was nothing out of the ordinary in the tribe, he felt relieved and left the tribe. Bai Ling's expression became even weirder as she watched the sky gradually darken. When the sky turned completely dark, Su Ming came to a halt in a forest and looked at Bai Ling helplessly. Looks like we'll have to spend the night here. The forest is not safe at night. Let's leave tomorrow morning. The cunning look that Su Ming had when he first saw her appeared in Bai Ling's eyes. She looked at Su Ming quietly, without a word. Under her gaze, Su Ming felt even more guilty. All right, then we'll spend the night here. After a while, Bai Ling suddenly smiled. Her smile was beautiful, and there was even a hint of wildness that was slowly returning to her. Su Ming touched his nose and smiled as well. He stood up and piled up dried branches on a big tree beside him to make a resting spot. He sat down with Bai Ling. At that moment, the two of them fell silent, as if they did not know what to say. I still don't know your name. After a long while, Bai Ling looked at Su Ming. Her eyes were bright under the moonlight. My name is Su Ming. I know your name is Bai Ling. Su Ming looked at Bai Ling and smiled. You lied to me at the square, didn't you? Humph. The more I thought about it when I went back to the tribe, the more I thought about it. Bai Ling blinked and wrinkled her nose. Her expression was very cute. About that, you're not the young master of Dark Mountain Tribe either, are you? Bai Ling's eyes sparkled as she smiled. Su Ming scratched his head. He did not know what to say. At that moment, snowflakes fell from the sky. The entire world was covered in fluffy, white snow. Ah, it's snowing. Su Ming immediately lifted his head and looked at the snow falling from the sky. He quickly changed the topic. There was a hint of a smile in Bai Ling's eyes. She did not pursue the matter. Instead, she also lifted her head and looked at the snow. Some of it fell on her face. It was cold and comfortable. The snow became heavier. As it fell, the two people in the forest seemed to be immersed in the beauty of the snow. They fell silent again. Su Ming, thank you. The sky was already dark, but the moonlight cast a silver glow on the area under the cover of the snow, causing the forest to look less dark. Thank you for saving me. Can you tell me about yourself? How did you end up there? Bai Ling looked at Su Ming and asked softly. I often go into the mountains to gather herbs. I accidentally found that place to avoid the cold. I didn't expect that the blood-red moon would appear yesterday. Su Ming did not talk about how he quenched the herbs, but instead told her about some other things. Time passed by slowly. Su Ming and Bai Ling slowly conversed in the snowy night. Gradually, they got to know each other better. Their voices spread out in the wind and snow. The elder of Dark Dragon Tribe is my grandmother. My father and mother left Dark Dragon Tribe a long time ago. I heard from my grandmother that they went to a tribe that's even bigger than Windstream. They haven't been back for a long time. Bai Ling hugged her body and started talking about the past in a low voice in the snow. I don't know who my father and mother are. I was adopted by the elder. Su Ming mumbled. Ah, so that's how it is? I was wondering why you're so much thinner than the others. You're not even as tall as me. Your elder must not have treated you well. Bai Ling widened her eyes. No, the elder is very good to me. Besides, you may be tall, but I heard from the elder that I'll be able to do the same in a few years. Besides, you're not as strong as the girls in the tribe. Su Ming smiled. That's because my elder taught me a berserker art. I heard that before my mother passed away, she asked my grandmother to teach it to me when I grew up. Bai Ling looked at Su Ming's hair, which had been dyed white by the snow, and said with a smile. Chapter 33. Look at your hair. It's all white now. Bai Ling covered her mouth and giggled. The light in her eyes made the strange feeling in Su Ming's heart grow stronger. And you're talking about me? Your hair has also turned white. You're an old woman now. Su Ming pointed at Bai Ling and laughed. The two of them became more familiar with each other as they chatted and laughed. Su Ming felt that his body and mind were filled with a wonderful feeling in the snowy night. He felt that time was passing by quickly. Unknowingly, the sky in the distance started to turn white. It was not snow, It was the rising sun. The night passed by just like that. When the light from the sky covered the land and snow continued falling from the sky, Su Ming and Bai Ling got down from the tree. They washed up and smiled at each other. Su Ming did not say anything else. He crouched down. Bai Ling's eyes sparkled. She walked over and continued to lie on his frail back. A warm feeling grew in her heart. This time, the closer Su Ming got to Dark Dragon Tribe, the more he felt a strange feeling in his heart. It was as if he did not want to leave. Gradually, he fell silent. His footsteps slowed down, and he started walking in circles. Bai Ling lay on Su Ming's back. Just like the day before, she saw many things that appeared repeatedly and knew that Su Ming was walking in circles. But this time, she did not speak. Instead, she placed her head on Su Ming's back and listened to his heartbeat. When the sun hung high in the sky, dusk arrived once again. Snow was still falling from the sky, but the outline of Dark Dragon Tribe appeared before Su Ming's eyes. As he looked at the tribe, Su Ming put down Bai Ling and smiled. "You're home." Bai Ling looked at the tribe and then at Su Ming. No one could tell what she was thinking from her beautiful face. She nodded her head silently and walked towards Su Ming. With her white hands, she gently swept away the snow on Su Ming's body. "Thank you. Go back to your tribe soon." Bai Ling opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but she did not. Instead, she smiled beautifully, took a few steps back, and walked towards her tribe. Su Ming stood there and looked at Bai Ling gradually disappearing into the distance. He looked at her petite figure occasionally turning her head back to wave at him. His mind was blank. As the distance between the two grew further and further, the snow falling from the sky also seemed to become an invisible barrier, fragmenting his vision and slowly covering the distant figure. It was as if he had walked through a land of ice. If he did not return, he would never see the ice melt. It was as if he was walking through the passage of time. If he did not reminisce, he would never hear who was sighing in those years. After a long while, Su Ming shook his head. He took one last look at Dark Dragon Tribe before he turned around and left. When he came, snow accompanied him, and when he left, it was the same. The snow fell on his body and hair, but it made Su Ming feel as if something was missing. "Do I like her?" Su Ming ran through the forest towards Dark Mountain Tribe. He frowned as he ran, and Bai Ling's face appeared in his mind. "It's different from when I'm with Chinexa." Su Ming took a deep breath and shook his head. It was as if he wanted to get rid of this strange feeling that he had never felt before. Once he calmed himself down, his eyes flashed, and he increased his speed once again. When the sky was dark, the stars shone brilliantly. As the moonlight shone on the ground and the snow that had been falling for an entire day and night, Su Ming returned to his home, Dark Mountain Tribe, as the snow fell endlessly. He had taken a look at the tribe from afar yesterday and was certain that the tribe was safe. Now that he had returned, he saw his tribe members standing guard outside the gate made of giant logs. The tribe was very quiet. The bonfire in the center of the tribe was still burning, making crackling sounds. Su Ming walked through the tribe and looked around him. Eventually, he arrived at the elder's house. There was still light coming from the elder's house. It was clear that he had not rested yet. "You must be Su Ming. Come in." The elder's voice traveled out. There was a hint of exhaustion in his voice. Su Ming lifted the curtain lightly and walked in. He saw the elder sitting cross-legged. His white hair was slightly messy. "Elder," Su Ming said softly and sat down by the elder's side. "Everything's fine in the tribe. Don't worry." The elder looked at Su Ming and smiled. He gestured for Su Ming to sit by his side. He lifted his wrinkled right hand and patted Su Ming's head a few times. His smile became wider. "You've reached the 3rd level. Not bad." Su Ming looked at the elder and slowly told him everything he saw in the cave. When he mentioned the skeleton, he could clearly see the elder's expression becoming serious. "Why do you weep?" "Elder, what do you mean by that?" Su Ming frowned. "The legends are true." The elder looked at the tent. His gaze seemed to be able to pierce through the tent and see Dark Mountain. That sentence should be asking myself, compared to the vast sky, what else do I have to be sad about? Or perhaps there's another meaning to it. The elder sighed. No one knew what he was thinking. His voice was filled with age as he spoke slowly. I don't really understand the words about worshipping fire. Perhaps it's your fortune that you can see it. The elder averted his gaze and looked at Su Ming kindly. 1 month later, I'll be going to Wine Stream Tribe. If you're outside, remember to come back. Also, elder, I saved a member of Dark Dragon Tribe in the nest of the wings of the moon. Her name is Bai Ling. She's the granddaughter of the elder of Dark Dragon Tribe. Su Ming nodded. He seemed to have remembered something and spoke again. Bai Ling? The elder was stunned. After a moment of silence, he asked Su Ming to go back and rest. Once Su Ming left, a nostalgic look appeared in the elder's eyes. Lei Su, your granddaughter was saved by my La Su by accident. Perhaps this can lessen your hatred towards me. The elder sighed. The nostalgic look in his eyes became stronger. The blood moon came early, and the strong chi that came from Black Mountain Tribe that night. Something bad is about to happen. The elder closed his eyes and mumbled. There was worry in his eyes. Su Ming left the elder's house and walked around the tribe. He did not return to his own tent, but went to Lei Chen's house. When he saw that Lei Chen only had some injuries on his body and was still full of vigor, he personally applied some medicine on him. Only then did Su Ming relax. When Lei Chen saw Su Ming, he was happy. He patted his chest and boasted about his fight against the wings of the moon. His saliva flew everywhere. After talking for a long time, Su Ming smiled and left. It was already late at night, but when Su Ming's gaze fell on a tent not too far away, there was a hesitant look on his face. That was the home of the head of the guards and also Bai Ling's home. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.